The disciples were dumbfounded and instinctively looked toward Ning Changge. He remained calm, knowing the effects of the pill he had refined. Seeing their astonishment, he smiled and said, "The golden wind jade dew pill primarily heals, but it also has some effect on enhancing cultivation." He sent out a stream of spiritual energy to protect Wang Chongyang from any backlash. As soon as his words fell, a booming sound erupted. Wang Chongyang's aura surged, shaking the air. He opened his eyes, filled with joy and admiration. The disciples looked on in awe. Wang Chongyang had broken through. He had reached the 7th level of the Heaven Man realm. In the Jianghu, this made him one of the strongest, just below the land immortals. "Congratulations, Master, on your full recovery and breakthrough." The Quanjin 7 offered their heartfelt congratulations. Moments ago, they had been despairing over their master's impending death. But now, with his injuries healed and his cultivation advanced, their emotions were a whirlwind. Wang Chongyang waved them off and then bowed deeply to Ning Changge. "Changge, this gift is too great. I feel unworthy. From now on, if you ever need anything, the Quanjin sect will give its all to assist you." Only Wang Chongyang truly understood how miraculous the golden wind jade dew pill was. He had already resigned himself to dying after dealing with his old rival, Ouyang Feng, but now, thanks to Ning Changge, he had a new lease on life, and his cultivation had even advanced. For a Heaven Man realm expert to advance further, the pill must be an incredibly rare treasure. The Quanjin 7, now fully aware of the pill's effects, also bowed to Ning Changge. "Thank you, little immortal, for your help. If you ever need anything, the Quanjin sect will give its all to assist you." They were filled with both gratitude and awe. The world knew that advancing in the Heaven Man realm required personal enlightenment and refining one's energy. External aids were rare and precious. Yet the pill's secondary effect had already pushed their master forward by one level. Its healing properties must be even more extraordinary. Even Zhou Batang, who usually didn't care about such things, understood the significance of the golden wind jade dew pill. It was undoubtedly a peerless elixir. For a moment, the entire Quanjin sect was filled with gratitude toward Ning Changge. Ning Changge helped Wang Chongyang up and smiled. "Master Chongyang, there's no need for such formality. Perhaps our meeting at Mount Hua 10 years ago was destined to lead to this moment." Hearing Ning Changge's calm and philosophical words, Wang Chongyang was momentarily stunned, then smiled bitterly. "No wonder you've achieved so much at such a young age. Your heart is far more enlightened than mine. I still have much to learn." His expression became more serene. He wasn't complacent, but he remembered this favor deeply. Ning Changge also felt a sense of relief. Resolving this karmic debt didn't mean he and Wang Chongyang would become strangers, but it freed him from an invisible burden. His mind felt clearer, and his smile deepened. They all sat down and began chatting casually. Though they were martial artists, they were also Taoists, and as they discussed the Tao, their admiration for Ning Changge grew. At only 10 years old, he had already traveled so far down the path of cultivation. If someone claimed he was the reincarnation of a Taoist sage, they would believe it. Eventually, Wang Chongyang brought up the Taoist scriptures he had prepared for Ning Changge. With a smile, he led Ning Changge to the library pavilion, pointing to the stacks of freshly copied Quanjin Taoist texts. "Changge, as per my agreement with your master, I am considered your half-master. However, I know I'm not qualified for such a title. Still, a promise is a promise. I know you love Taoist scriptures and enjoy seeking your own understanding, as Zhang Sanfeng mentioned in his letters. Therefore, I offer you the entire Quanjin Taoist collection. You may study it freely while you're here, and when you leave, I'll have the scriptures delivered to Wudang." Wang Chongyang was very open-minded. If Ning Changge were only a grandmaster or even a great-grandmaster, he might have been more comfortable with the half-master title, hoping to benefit from it in the future. But now Ning Changge was a legend, and even the infamous evil emperor couldn't defeat him. Wang Chongyang, a mere Heaven Man realm cultivator, couldn't possibly claim the title of half-master. The Quanjin 7 finally understood their master's intentions. When they had been copying the scriptures, they hadn't fully grasped why. But now, after seeing the miraculous effects of the golden wind jade dew pill, they had no complaints. Ning Changge looked at the vast collection of Taoist texts, feeling a sense of awe. While some of it overlapped with Wudang's collection, much of it was new to him. As a major Taoist sect, Quanjin had a deep foundation. He hadn't expected such a reward from this visit to Quanjin. It was an unexpected gain, perfectly aligning with the principles of karma. His thoughts became even clearer. With that, Ning Changge bowed to Wang Chongyang. "Thank you, Master Chongyang, for this generous gift." He didn't mention what he would do in the future, but he kept it in mind. The pills he had given earlier were to settle the debt from 10 years ago, but this gift of Taoist scriptures was something he would remember. Seeing Ning Changge accept the Taoist texts, the Quanzhen disciples smiled. Even Sun Bu'er, who had initially objected to giving away their core texts, had no complaints now. To them, the Golden Wind Jade Du pill and Jiazi pill were already more than enough. More importantly, they could see that Ning Changge was not a cold or indifferent person. That was all they needed to know. Wang Chongyang and the other disciples left the library pavilion, leaving Ning Changge alone. They had heard that Ning Changge spent most of his time in Wudang's pavilion, studying the Tao. Now seeing so many Taoist texts, they knew he would be delighted, so they wisely gave him space. Ning Changge was indeed pleased. After 10 years of reading Taoist texts, he had developed a genuine love for them. He didn't use his spiritual sense, but instead slowly scanned the texts with his eyes, enjoying the scent of the freshly dried ink. It was clear that all of this had been prepared before his arrival. In other words, even if he hadn't brought the Jiazi pill and Golden Wind Jade Du pill, Wang Chongyang had planned to give him the Taoist texts. This was partly to honor their past friendship, but perhaps also because Wang Chongyang had thought he didn't have much time left and wanted to find a backer for the Quanzhen sect. Ning Changge's gaze lingered on each text. Occasionally, he would open one, his eyes lighting up with joy. Finally, he stopped in front of a stack of martial arts manuals, his expression softening. Wang Chongyang hadn't just given him the Quanzhen Taoist texts. He had also given him all of Quanzhen's martial arts. The 9 Yin Manual, Innate Skill, Quanzhen Heart Method, Quanzhen Sword Technique, Golden Goose Skill. All of Quanzhen's martial arts were laid out before Ning Changge. To the martial world, this was like handing over their entire heritage. If Ning Changge had ill intentions, he could easily establish his own branch of Quanzhen. But to Ning Changge, the Taoist texts were far more valuable. Still, this gesture carried great weight. He focused on the first 2 manuals, or rather, the first one, the 9 Yin Manual. It said that the 9 Yin Manual was created by Huang Shang while compiling Taoist texts. It contains profound principles. Curious, Ning Changge opened the manual. The 9 Yin Manual was divided into 2 parts. The first part focused on internal cultivation, including techniques like the Big Dipper method and the bone refining chapter. The second part contained martial arts, such as the White Python Whip and the 9 Yin White Bone Claw. However, Ning Changge wasn't particularly interested in the martial arts. Instead, he focused on the relatively short general principles. The Tao of Heaven reduces the surplus to replenish the deficient. Therefore, the empty triumphs over the full, and the weak triumphs over the strong. The essence of the 5 viscera and 6 bowels ascends to the eyes, becoming the essence of sight. The essence of the bones forms the pupils, and the essence of the tendons forms the black of the eyes. Ning Changge's eyes gleamed as he carefully studied each word. He felt that the essence of the 9 Yin Manual lay in these principles. Just reading these few hundred words made him feel as though he were sitting with a Taoist master, discussing the Tao. He gained many insights. For me, only the general principles of the 9 Yin Manual are useful. They are the distilled wisdom of Huang Shang's understanding of Taoist texts. Studying them should provide me with spiritual guidance. He couldn't help but praise. Huang Shang was truly a genius in the Tao. If he had pursued the immortal Tao, he would have brought me even more inspiration. Huang Shang had been a civil official of the Song dynasty 200 years ago. If he hadn't died, he would likely be a land immortal by now. Just from reading the 9 Yin Manual, Ning Changge could tell that Huang Shang had been a powerful figure among the land immortals. If he's still alive, I'll surely meet him one day. Ning Changge smiled and closed the 9 Yin Manual. Next, he opened the Innate Skill and Quanzhen Heart Method. Wang Chongyang had shared everything with him without reservation, and Ning Changge intended to repay that kindness. He sought only peace of mind. As he read, Ning Changge quickly understood the 2 martial arts. Master Chongyang is indeed a founding master of a sect. His talent is extraordinary. Both of these techniques are excellent. The innate skill cultivates innate energy, which requires a great grandmaster level to practice. It eventually transforms into innate energy, leading to the land immortal realm. The Quanzhen Heart Method is balanced and peaceful. It's easy to learn but difficult to master. However, once mastered, it's quite powerful and serves as a foundation for the innate skill. Unfortunately, the only flaw is that Master Chongyang's disciples lack the talent to reach the great grandmaster level, which is necessary to continue practicing the innate skill. Ning Changge smiled. This was similar to the situation Wudang had faced in the past. Originally, he had planned to give them 3 Jiazi pills to help with their immediate needs. But now that he had received the Quanzhen Taoist texts, he decided to put in a little more effort to address the root of the problem. He glanced at the 9 Yin manual and had an idea. Closing his eyes, streams of spiritual light began to flicker, and the 3 martial arts seemed to merge. The library pavilion was silent, with a faint fragrance in the air. Ning Changge entered a state of enlightenment. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, he slowly opened his eyes, a look of joy on his face. System notification. You have used the Quanzhen Heart method as a foundation, combined it with the bone refining chapter from the 9 Yin manual, and altered the flow of the technique. You have created the Quanzhen Heart method, improved version. You have used the innate skill as a foundation, combined it with the Big Dipper method from the 9 Yin manual, and incorporated the mysteries of the Big Dipper. You have created the innate skill, improved version. Ning Changge hadn't created entirely new martial arts but had merely improved the existing ones. For him, this was a simple task. Out of respect for Quanzhen's martial arts, he hadn't changed the names, keeping the original titles of the Quanzhen Heart method and innate skill. Now both techniques had been greatly enhanced. The improved Quanzhen Heart method, combined with the bone refining chapter, will naturally improve one's aptitude with diligent practice. Although it can't compare to Wudang's yin-yang infinite technique, over time, it will still significantly enhance one's talent. This way, even the Quanzhen 7 can use it to break through to the Grandmaster level or even the Great Grandmaster level. And the improved innate skill with the Big Dipper's mysteries has a lower threshold. Even at the Grandmaster level, one can cultivate innate energy and eventually form innate energy, gaining considerable combat power. Ning Changge was very satisfied with his improvements. One technique improved aptitude, raising the ceiling for practitioners. The other lowered the entry barrier, allowing people to start earlier. With these changes, the Quanzhen sect only needed to continue developing, and as long as its disciples focused on cultivation, its foundation would grow stronger over time. For the Quanzhen sect, this was an incredible gift. For Ning Changge, spending the time it took for an incense stick to burn to clear his conscience and achieve peace of mind was equally important. He casually placed the 2 revised manuals to the side and then picked up a Taoist text, immersing himself in the world of Taoist scriptures. A smile slowly spread across his face. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. When Ning Changge stepped out of the library pavilion, he saw Wang Chongyang and his disciples approaching. Wang Chongyang praised him. No wonder you've achieved so much at such a young age, Changge. Your dedication to the Tao is unmatched in the Quanzhen sect. The Quanzhen 7 looked at Ning Changge with admiration, while Zhou Batong was nowhere to be found. Ning Changge simply smiled. Sometimes, when immersed in Taoist texts, time seemed to slip away. If he had been at Wudang with no distractions, he might have stayed in the library pavilion for a month. Thank you, Master Chongyang, for the Taoist texts. I've gained much from them. Wang Chongyang waved his hand and smiled. As long as they've been helpful to you. I've come to disturb you today because it's the Quanzhen sect's biannual Taoist lecture. I'd like to invite you to join us. If you have the time, perhaps you could give a lecture yourself and open the eyes of our young Taoists. I hope you don't mind. His expression was sincere. Ning Changge was intrigued. It would be a good opportunity to see how the Quanzhen Taoists understood the Tao, and he could also use the occasion to pass on the 2 newly improved martial arts. Master Chongyang, there's no need for such formality. The Tao has no hierarchy. Even a child can inspire a Taoist sage. How could I compare to a Taoist sage? Everyone was impressed by Ning Changge's humility. Ning Changge followed Wang Chongyang and the others to the Taoist hall, where many disciples were already waiting eagerly. Seeing their arrival, the disciples' eyes lit up with excitement, and they began to whisper among themselves. Is that the legendary little immortal who used a sword formation to slay the evil emperor? His aura is truly otherworldly, like an immortal descended from the heavens. Being able to see him today is a blessing. If I tell this story while traveling the Jianghu, it'll surely earn me some respect. Indeed, I just heard from senior brother that the little immortal might give us a lecture today. How exciting! Really? Of course. Didn't you see him talking with the Grandmaster? I heard that our Grandmaster almost took him in as a disciple back then. If that had happened, the little immortal would be our junior uncle now. The disciples were abuzz with conversation, filled with admiration and respect for Ning Changge. His achievements were simply too extraordinary. Ever since he destroyed the dragon-slaying saber on Wudang's Tianzhu Peak, his reputation had only grown. Any one of his accomplishments would have made him a legendary figure in the Jianghu, but when they were all attributed to a single person, it seemed almost unbelievable. Upon learning that Ning Changge had nearly joined the Quanjin sect, the disciples couldn't help but sigh with regret. After all, who wouldn't want such an amazing junior uncle in their sect? As they chatted, their eyes never left Ning Changge, watching as he and Wang Chongyang sat on the high platform. At the Taoist hall, Wang Chongyang and Ning Changge sat side by side, with the Quanjin 7 below them, followed by the other disciples. The fact that Ning Changge was seated on the same level as Wang Chongyang showed the immense respect the Quanjin sect had for him. Wang Chongyang smiled at Ning Changge and said, "Chang, this is your first time attending our Quanjin lecture. Why don't you listen first and then offer your insights afterward? It will be a good opportunity for them to learn." Ning Changge nodded with a smile, and the Quanjin disciples below called out in unison, "We, the third-generation disciples of the Quanjin sect, greet the little immortal." The disciples were all smiles, their eyes filled with admiration as they looked at Ning Changge and Wang Chongyang. Wang Chongyang's expression grew serious, and his voice took on a deeper tone, infused with true qi. "This is our biannual lecture. As per tradition, it will be divided into two parts, Tao and martial arts. Tao is the foundation, while martial arts are a means to protect and strengthen the body. You must remember this." Ning Changge silently nodded in agreement. The Quanjin sect's philosophy was similar to Wudang's. Though it was a Jianghu sect, its essence was rooted in Taoism. The disciples primarily cultivated the Tao, with martial arts serving as a supplementary practice for protection. However, the Quanjin sect wasn't purely Taoist. It advocated the integration of Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism. This fusion of the three teachings, focusing on understanding the heart and seeing one's true nature, was what defined Quanjin. The disciples' expressions grew serious as they listened intently. Ning Changge also sat upright, paying close attention. From his previous discussions with Wang Chongyang, he knew that the Grandmaster's understanding of the Tao was exceptional. Wang Chongyang's voice echoed through the hall. "Those who leave the secular world must first seek a hermitage. If one does not move, the blood and qi will stagnate. Medicine is the essence of mountains and rivers, the quintessence of plants and trees. The Tao of the heart is such that if one remains calm, the heart will not move, and one will see nothing." He began with the basics, discussing hermitage, wandering, studying, meditation, and calming the mind. Though these were foundational concepts, Wang Chongyang always managed to offer new insights, often using examples to explain his points. Ning Changge nodded in approval, feeling inspired. However, when he glanced at the disciples, he noticed that most of them seemed confused, understanding the words but not the deeper meaning. 5 qi gather in the central palace, 3 essences converge at the peak. The azure dragon exhales red mist, the white tiger spits black smoke. The myriad spirits align, the 100 meridians flow, cinnabar glows, mercury and lead condense. Though the body resides in the human world, the spirit roams the heavens. Wang Chongyang continued, his eyes deep as though immersed in the world of Taoist scriptures. He delved into his understanding of the 3 flowers and 5 qi. The 3 essences are the 3 flowers, essence, qi, and spirit. Essence is the jade flower, qi is the golden flower, and spirit is the 9 flower. Ning Changge's mind felt as though it had been struck by lightning, and flashes of insight began to appear. 3 flowers gather at the peak, 5 qi return to the origin. Essence, qi, and spirit nurture the 3 flowers, while the 5 organs store the 5 qi, which correspond to the 5 elements. The 5 qi and 5 elements. Once I reach the foundation establishment stage, I can delve deeper into this. As for the 3 flowers, essence, qi, and spirit, I've already touched upon them. When I comprehended the pure yang true fire, I gained insight into the true fire of essence and qi. Only the true fire of spirit has eluded me, but could it be that? I've been guarding a treasure without realizing it? Ning Changge couldn't help but laugh inwardly, feeling a great sense of relief. In his sea of consciousness, his spirit god flickered, and a pale, eerie flame began to rise, growing stronger with each passing moment. The spirit god was the embryonic form of the primordial spirit, and the true fire of spirit was born from the primordial spirit itself. Just as the pure yang true fire had emerged from the sun-like spiritual energy, the true fire of spirit would emerge from the spirit god. System notification. You have listened to Wang Chongyang's lecture and gained insight into the principles of the 3 flowers and 5 qi. Combining this with your understanding of the Samadhi true fire, you have created the immortal Tao technique, pure yin true fire. In that moment of enlightenment, a pale flame suddenly rose from Ning Changge's body, exuding an unsettling aura. The pure yin true fire was the true fire of the primordial spirit, specifically designed to burn the primordial spirit, consciousness, soul, will, and even obsessions. As the pure yin true fire formed, Ning Changge felt all his distracting thoughts burn away, entering a state of emptiness and clarity. The pale flame continued to rise, enveloping him, but it did not spread outward. Wang Chongyang was startled awake. When he saw the flame surrounding Ning Changge, his pupils contracted. He felt as though he had encountered something terrifying, as if the flame could burn him into the cycle of reincarnation, erasing his soul entirely. What kind of fire is this? The disciples below also noticed the strange phenomenon around Ning Changge, their eyes wide with shock as they whispered among themselves. What's happening to the little immortal? Could this be the legendary pure yang true fire? No, I've heard that pure yang true fire is blue, but this flame is pale. Could it be that the little immortal has gained new insight from the Grandmaster's lecture? This speculation left everyone in awe. What kind of monstrous talent could gain such terrifying enlightenment from just a brief lecture? Though they couldn't fully comprehend the flame's power, they instinctively knew it was dangerous. Just a spark could likely wipe out the entire Quanzhen sect. The disciples whispered in low voices, but Wang Chongyang quickly gestured for silence. They immediately quieted down, their eyes still fixed on Ning Changge. By this time, the flames around Ning Changge had gradually dissipated, and the true fire of the primordial spirit had withdrawn. He emerged from his meditative state, his eyes filled with a hint of apology. I deeply apologize for interrupting your lecture, Master Chongyang. Wang Chongyang waved it off but couldn't help asking, did you gain some insight? He didn't bother hiding his joy. The harvest from this session was immense. Now that he had comprehended the true fire of the primordial spirit, if he could also grasp the true fire of essence, he would be able to combine essence, qi, and spirit to form the Samadhi true fire once he reached the foundation establishment stage. Even without the Samadhi true fire, the true fire of the primordial spirit was already formidable. The true fire of the primordial spirit had 2 main functions. 1, enlightenment. It could burn away distracting thoughts and inner demons, allowing the user to enter a state of emptiness and clarity, making it easier to comprehend the Tao. 2. Combat. It could burn the soul, will, and primordial spirit of enemies. If Ning Changge were to face the Buddhist monks Buddha's will again, a single burst of the true fire of the primordial spirit would be enough to incinerate it, without needing the combined power of heavenly thunder and true fire like before. Hearing Ning Changge's response, Wang Chongyang couldn't help but sigh in admiration. Changge, your comprehension is unmatched in this world. He knew that Ning Changge's little insight was far from ordinary. The Quanzhen 7, hearing Wang Chongyang's praise, couldn't help but feel envious. After all, in all their years of listening to Wang Chongyang's lectures, they had rarely gained such insights. But they also knew they couldn't compare to Ning Changge. Ning Changge smiled and apologized again for interrupting the lecture. Wang Chongyang waved it off, clearly pleased that Ning Changge had gained something from the session. He continued his lecture as usual. This time, the disciples listened even more attentively, hoping to gain insights like Ning Changge. But unfortunately, not everyone possessed such monstrous talent. Ning Changge's enlightenment had come not only from Wang Chongyang's lecture, but also from his deep understanding of the Tao of the 3 flowers. Wang Chongyang's words had merely provided the final push. Wang Chongyang wasn't disappointed, as gaining no insight was the norm. Do not be discouraged. Diligence in cultivation is the true path, he gently reminded them. The disciples snapped out of their reverie and thanked him, nearly falling into a state of obsession. Wang Chongyang then moved on to martial arts, focusing on the Quanzhen heart method, the foundational technique of the Quanzhen sect. All Quanzhen disciples practiced this method, and those who reached the great grandmaster level could then transition to the innate skill. Ning Changge listened quietly. The martial arts lecture was of little use to him, but it did give him an opportunity to further refine the improvements he had made to the Quanzhen heart method 3 days earlier. When the lecture on the Quanzhen heart method ended, Wang Chongyang paused, and the disciples called out in unison, "Thank you, Grandmaster, for the lecture and martial arts instruction." Their eyes were filled with gratitude, as the lecture had clearly been beneficial. Many disciples had resolved their long-standing doubts. Wang Chongyang laughed and nodded. Next, Ma Yu and the other Quanjin 7 took turns giving their own lectures. They also discussed the Tao and martial arts, but compared to Wang Chongyang's insights, their teachings seemed far more rudimentary. For Ning Changge, they were of little value. As for the martial arts portion, it was even less useful. The Quanjin 7 didn't discuss the Quanjin heart method, but instead focused on techniques like the Golden Goose skill and the Quanjin sword technique, explaining key points in their practice. When the 7 had finished, the disciples still seemed eager for more, their eyes drifting toward Ning Changge, who remained seated on the high platform. Even the Quanjin 7 looked at him expectantly. Wang Chongyang laughed. "We've merely laid the groundwork. Changge, how about sharing some insights from Wudang's Tao?" Ning Changge smiled. "Since you've invited me, I shall oblige." As soon as he spoke, his aura became ethereal, exuding an otherworldly and unattainable quality. His voice, like the sound of the Tao itself, began to resonate as he spoke. His teachings were too profound, and even with the aid of spiritual power, most of the audience couldn't fully grasp them. So he chose to focus on a specific portion, just as he had done when lecturing at Wudang. He began with the 5 elements. The 5 elements: water, fire, wood, metal, and earth. Water moistens and descends, fire blazes and rises, wood bends and straightens, metal yields and reforms, earth nurtures and reaps. With just a few words, the disciples were left in a daze, their hearts filled with a sense of awe. Even Wang Chongyang was no exception. In their minds, incredible visions began to unfold. A black tortoise stepped out of the sea, stirring up towering waves. This was water. A green dragon soared into the sky, entwined with a celestial tree. This was wood. There were also divine trees in the ocean, lotus flowers of fire and water, and a golden crow blazing in the sky. These were the manifestations of the Tao. Compared to Wang Chongyang's earlier lecture, this was like night and day. Ning Changge was using the Tao manifestation technique, which allowed him to present the essence of his Tao to the audience. The Tao of the 5 elements wasn't just for immortal Tao cultivation. It was also applicable to martial arts. In the Taoist hall, the disciples could already be heard breaking through, their progress shaking the hall. Although the Quanjin heart method couldn't compare to Wudang's techniques, and Ning Changge's teachings weren't perfectly suited to them, the impact was still significant. Several talented disciples began to break through. Among them, Tan Chuduan, one of the Quanjin 7, was moved to tears. He had just gained insight into the Tao of water, allowing him to break through a barrier that had troubled him for years. He had reached the Grandmaster realm, becoming the 3rd Grandmaster among the Quanjin 7. A wave of awe-filled gazes turned toward Ning Changge, filled with admiration and reverence. Only now did they realize what it meant for Ning Changge to give a lecture. It was like receiving guidance from a Taoist sage, a revelation that pierced the soul. Wang Chongyang stood there, stunned, as though he were dreaming. But it wasn't over yet. Ning Changge smiled and shifted from discussing the Tao to martial arts. "A few years ago, I received the Taoist texts from Master Chongyang and have since gained some insights into the Quanjin heart method." He began to explain the Quanjin heart method. The disciples, still in shock, quickly straightened up and listened attentively. "The great Tao begins by opening the 9 orifices, and the 9 orifices originate from the Wailu acupoint. First, the energy rises from the Yongquan acupoint at the soles of the feet, gradually ascending to the knees." As Ning Changge recited the familiar Quanjin heart method, the disciples were initially puzzled. But soon, those who had practiced the method began to widen their eyes in disbelief. Especially Wang Chongyang, whose body trembled slightly, his face flushed with excitement. As the founder of the Quanjin sect and the creator of the Quanjin heart method, Wang Chongyang had also studied the 9 Yin manual and was well aware of its mysteries. As he listened closely, he realized that Ning Changge's version of the Quanjin heart method wasn't ordinary. It contained the profound principles of the 9 Yin manual. In fact, Wang Chongyang had once attempted to merge the 9 Yin manual with his innate skill, but he had failed and suffered a backlash. Later, he was ambushed by Ouyang Feng, leaving him with the source injury that would have killed him if not for Ning Changge's golden wind jade dew pill. Now, his eyes widened in shock. He could tell that Ning Changge had successfully integrated the bone refining chapter from the 9 Yin manual into the Quanjin heart method. This meant that from now on, anyone who practiced the Quanzhen heart method would naturally improve their aptitude. This was an incredible development. In an instant, the Quanzhen heart method had become a divine technique. In the Jianghu, any technique that could enhance one's aptitude would be fought over by countless people. And the most astonishing part was that Ning Changge had only studied the Quanzhen heart method 3 days ago. In just 3 days, he had refined and enhanced it, creating a powerful divine technique. What kind of monstrous talent was this? For a moment, Wang Chongyang and the Quanzhen disciples gained a deeper understanding of Ning Changge's terrifying talent. This was even more shocking than when Ning Changge had comprehended the true fire of the primordial spirit. Before, they had known that the pale fire was powerful, but they hadn't fully grasped its significance. But the Quanzhen heart method was different. It was the technique they practiced every day. Wang Chongyang had just lectured on it, and now, hearing Ning Changge's version, the difference was clear. It was no longer the same Quanzhen heart method. It was a completely new technique. Ning Changge had simply chosen not to rename it. Sensing the shock and awe in the room, Ning Changge smiled inwardly. If they knew that he had created this technique in the time it took for an incense stick to burn, they would be even more astonished. At that moment, everyone stared at Ning Changge, their eyes filled with disbelief. Even after he finished speaking, they remained in a daze. The Quanzhen Seven were so excited that their faces turned red, and they couldn't stop trembling. Aptitude had always been their lifelong struggle. While Wang Chongyang's reputation as the central divinity was great in the Song dynasty, his disciples were not particularly outstanding, much like the Wudang's 7 heroes before them. But now Ning Changge's lecture on the Quanzhen heart method gave them hope. With hard work, they could improve their aptitude. They might not become peerless geniuses, but they could certainly do better than before. At least they wouldn't need to spend decades breaking through to the Grandmaster level, and with dedication, even the great Grandmaster level was within reach. Ma Yu's gratitude was palpable. Since Ning Changge's arrival at Quanzhen, he had first used the Golden Wind Jade Du pill to heal their master's source injury, then delivered a lecture that led to breakthroughs among the disciples, including Tan Chuduan's promotion to Grandmaster. And now he had perfected the Quanzhen heart method to such a level. All these contributions made Ning Changge a great benefactor to the Quanzhen sect. The improvement of the Quanzhen heart method greatly increased the sect's foundation, and in time, it would surely become a major sect, perhaps even a true Taoist holy land. With this thought, the Quanzhen disciples all bowed in gratitude, exclaiming, "Thank you, little immortal, for your kindness in teaching us martial arts." They looked at Ning Changge with eyes full of gratitude and admiration, realizing that he was even more extraordinary than the legends suggested. His broad-mindedness was also worthy of respect. He was a peerless genius, both in talent and character. Ning Changge accepted their gratitude with a smile. Wang Chongyang was filled with emotion and was about to bow when his expression froze and his eyes widened in shock. Through a secret transmission, the secrets of the innate skill were being whispered into his ear. Ning Changge had also shared the improved version of the innate skill with him. However, since it was the Quanzhen sect's core technique, he only shared it with Wang Chongyang, leaving it to him to decide who to teach it to. Wang Chongyang was astounded. The mantras of the innate skill entered his ears, but they were imbued with different wonders, exactly what he had been striving for. He had tried to integrate the mysteries of the 9-yin manual into the innate skill, but had failed. Now, Ning Changge's version of the innate skill was presented to him, more perfect than he could have imagined. The impact was even greater than the improvement of the Quanzhen heart method. After all, the innate skill was his life's work and pride. So that's it. Incorporating the mysteries of the Big Dipper into the innate skill can lower its threshold, allowing grandmasters to practice it. Wang Chongyang's eyes shone brightly, and he couldn't help but slap his thigh and shout, standing up in excitement. He marveled at the improved innate skill. The Quanzhen Seven were initially puzzled by their master's sudden change in expression and trembling body. It wasn't until Wang Chongyang exclaimed that they realized Ning Changge was communicating with him. Hearing Wang Chongyang's words, they exchanged glances, their emotions once again surging with disbelief. From Wang Chongyang's reaction, it was clear what Ning Changge was discussing. The little immortal has even improved the innate skill. Grandmasters can now practice it. They couldn't help but gasp, staring blankly at the high platform. Wang Chongyang looked at Ning Changge, his awe and admiration beyond words. He had always considered himself a rare martial arts prodigy in the Jianghu, but compared to Ning Changge, He seemed ordinary. He had spent nearly a decade trying to combine the innate skill with the 9-yin manual, but Ning Changge had accomplished it in just 3 days, and so perfectly. The improved innate skills mantras echoed in his mind, leaving Wang Chongyang with nothing but admiration. Such ingenious ideas were beyond his reach, even with another 20 years. He stood up straight and bowed deeply to Ning Changge. Changge, this bow is to thank you for enriching the foundation of Quanzhen. With the Quanzhen heart method and innate skill, our legacy is secure. Thank you. His sincerity was evident. He didn't make grand promises of future support, but knew that if Ning Changge ever needed anything, the Quanzhen sect would be there to help. Seeing their grandmaster bow so deeply, the Quanzhen disciples followed suit, exclaiming, "Thank you, little immortal, for enriching the foundation of Quanzhen." Ning Changge helped Wang Chongyang up and smiled. "Master Chongyang gifted me the Quanzhen Taoist texts and martial arts. I'm merely returning the favor. This is karma." He was open-minded and didn't dwell on it. If Wang Chongyang hadn't shared the Quanzhen martial arts with him, there wouldn't have been such gains. The Quanzhen disciples were filled with emotion. Returning the favor was one thing, but the favor Ning Changge had returned was immense. Wang Chongyang took several deep breaths to calm his emotions. Years of cultivation couldn't compare to the shock he had experienced today. What he had thought would be a normal lecture had turned into a day full of surprises from Ning Changge. As Ning Changge sat on the platform, many admiring glances were cast his way. With his lecture concluded, Ning Changge remained silent. Typically, the next part would be a cue and a session and mutual verification among the disciples. However, given the excitement from Ning Changge's lecture, Wang Chongyang decided to lecture a second time, focusing on cultivating the mind. As Wang Chongyang's voice filled the hall, the disciples' excitement gradually subsided. After an incense stick's worth of time, the cue and a session began. Most questions were directed at the Quanzhen 7, and if they couldn't answer, Wang Chongyang would step in. No one dared to question Ning Changge, out of respect. Though they were eager to ask, they feared their questions might be laughed at. Time passed, and the lecture gradually drew to a close. Ma Yu stood up, smiling. Thanks to Ning Changge's participation, this had been the most successful lecture in a decade, with everyone gaining something. He was about to conclude the session when a loud, frantic voice echoed from afar. Senior brother, save me. If you don't, your junior brother will die." Everyone instinctively looked toward the source of the voice and saw 2 figures approaching. Leading the way was a chubby Taoist with small, round eyes, followed by a sinister-looking middle-aged man holding a snake-headed staff with a high-nose bridge. It was Zhou Batong and the Western Venom, Ouyang Feng. Zhou Batong was known for his restlessness and had skipped the lecture to wander down the mountain, only to be ambushed by Ouyang Feng. Now his face was darkened with poison, clearly having been bitten by snakes. "I know I was wrong. I won't be naughty anymore. This old venom is terrifying. He set snakes on me." Zhou Batong shouted, his eyes darting around for an opportunity, while venomous snakes slithered in from all directions, making everyone's skin crawl. Ouyang Feng, the Western Venom, was known for his toad skill and mastery of snake control. As he played a flute, the snakes rose, flicking their tongues menacingly, creating a terrifying scene. Ma Yu and the others were furious, shouting, "Ouyang Feng, you call yourself one of the Song Dynasty's 5 greats, yet you resort to such despicable tactics. Release my martial uncle or you'll regret it." The Quanzhen 7 stepped forward, standing in a line. Though their martial skills weren't exceptional, their respect for their master and love for their disciples were unwavering. Even against a top-tier heaven man like Ouyang Feng, they showed no fear. Ouyang Feng lowered his flute and sneered. He ignored the Quanzhen 7 and looked at Wang Chongyang on the high platform. However, the white-robed young Taoist beside him caught his attention. He hadn't noticed this person before. Only now, as he looked over, did his pupils contract. He didn't know who this was, but they were seated alongside Wang Chongyang. However, he quickly dismissed it, assuming this young Taoist was part of Wang Chongyang's ploy. He fixed his gaze on Wang Chongyang and sneered. "You old Taoist, you tricked me once years ago and now you want to trick me again. Do you think I'm a fool using a pretty young Taoist to play tricks? You're gravely ill and won't live much longer. I'll give you one last chance. Hand over the 9-yin manual, or I'll kill your junior brother today and wipe out Quanzhen after you're gone." His words were filled with malice. It turned out that he had received information that Wang Chongyang had a source injury and was weaker than he appeared. Last time, he had been scared off while trying to seize the 9-yin manual. Ouyang Feng couldn't tolerate this humiliation and had returned to Mount Zhongnan. He easily subdued the unsuspecting Zhou Batong with poison and captured him to threaten Wang Chongyang. He glared at Wang Chongyang, still bitter about not obtaining the 9-yin manual during the martial arts contest 10 years ago. He wanted to acquire its mysteries to perfect his martial arts and advance to the land immortal realm, with Wang Chongyang being his obstacle. However, to his surprise, after he finished speaking, the Quanzhen disciples showed no anger. Instead, they looked at him with a strange expression, which made Ouyang Feng feel extremely uneasy. The Quanzhen disciples could barely contain their laughter. Ouyang Feng had mistaken the little immortal for a trick by their master. It was laughable. The little immortal of Wudang, whose spiritual monkey could easily defeat a heaven man, and this Western venom dared to act arrogantly in his presence. Ma Yu and the others quickly bowed to Ning Changge, saying, "Little immortal, please forgive this spectacle." Wang Chongyang sighed helplessly. "This is the karma I sowed in the past. Changge, don't let it trouble you." Ning Changge shook his head with a smile, amused by the dramatic turn of events. However, he knew that today's issue with Ouyang Feng might not be solely about the Quanzhen sect. His spiritual sense spread, encompassing the entire Mount Zhongnan. Before he could act, Ouyang Feng froze. "Little immortal!" Hearing Ma Yu and the others address the young Taoist, he immediately recalled the terrifying figure who had recently gained fame in the Jianghu. He was filled with dread. Looking at the young Taoist again, a brief eye contact felt like being crushed by an endless galaxy. Those deep eyes seemed to contain the universe, as if the Tao itself was manifesting within them. Cold sweat ran down his back. He dared not doubt any longer. This was undoubtedly the little immortal who had slain the evil emperor and destroyed the golden Buddha. His heart raced, his mouth dry, and panic rose within him. Why was the little immortal of Wudang suddenly here? Realization struck him like lightning. The information he had received was likely a deliberate trap, and he was merely a pawn to test the little immortal. Ouyang Feng immediately retreated, shouting, "Little immortal, I was used!" He abandoned Zhou Batong and fled, his body swelling as he unleashed his toad skill, his breath like thunder. But Ning Changge remained unmoved. With a flick of his finger, a pale flame leaped across the void, landing on Ouyang Feng. "Though you were used, your evil intentions are your own doing," Ning Changge said calmly. As the pure yin true fire touched Ouyang Feng, it erupted instantly. The intense qi that had been surging through Ouyang Feng's body halted in an instant. His body froze and his eyes became empty. Zhou Batong, watching in a daze, shivered. He felt that Ouyang Feng had become a soulless shell, a mere husk. He looked at Ning Changge with immense reverence. Indeed, as Zhou Batong suspected, the pure yin true fire was the true fire of the primordial spirit. It could burn the spiritual consciousness of cultivators, let alone a mere heaven man expert. In an instant, Ouyang Feng's soul was reduced to ashes, leaving only a lifeless body. One of the Song dynasty's 5 greats, the Western venom, Ouyang Feng was slain with a single flame. But the pale flame flared up again. From Ouyang Feng's body, it spread like stardust, falling among the snakes. In an instant, the snakes turned into statues, frozen in place, eerily still. It was only then that the Quanzhen disciples snapped out of their daze, staring blankly at the scene before them. Wang Chui murmured, "If I'm not mistaken, Ouyang Feng was killed by a single flame from the little immortal." His eyes were wide with shock, followed by the sound of gasps. Everyone was stunned by the scene before them. Ouyang Feng's lifeless body and the frozen snakes looked so bizarre. They had witnessed Ning Changge comprehend this pale flame technique, but they hadn't expected it to be so terrifying. A single flame had incinerated the Western venom, leaving them in awe. Wang Chongyang also stood in a daze. The Western venom Ouyang Feng was one of the 5 greats, and while he wasn't quite as strong as Wang Chongyang, he wasn't far behind. Yet now he had been killed in an instant. Did that mean Wang Chongyang would suffer the same fate against Ning Changge? The disparity left him with a bitter smile. But considering Ning Changge's terrifying accomplishments, it seemed reasonable. Still, hearing about it was one thing, witnessing it firsthand was another. "Changge, this shouldn't have been your battle. Ouyang Feng came for the 9-yin manual," Wang Chongyang said, coming to his senses. This was a matter between the Quanzhen sect and Ouyang Feng. Involving Ning Changge made him feel guilty, as the Quanzhen sect already owed him so much. But Ning Changge merely waved it off with a smile. "Not at all. Ouyang Feng was merely a pawn to test me. It's a convenient resolution." He looked into the distance, his voice echoing across Mount Zhongnan. "Since you know I'm here at Quanjin, why not show yourself?" The Quanjin disciples were startled, even Wang Chongyang. If there was someone more formidable than Aoyang Feng, could it be a land immortal? The thought made their hearts race. As they speculated wildly, two voices rang out in succession. "Ning Changge, you severed my limbs on Mount Amei. Today we settle this score. Golden Wheel of the Secret Sect, at your service, little immortal." The first voice was filled with obvious resentment and hostility, while the second was slightly calmer but still carried a sense of obsession. The identity of the second voice was unclear to many, but the first was instantly recognizable. The one who had his limbs severed on Mount Amei by the little immortal. Who else could it be but the evil Emperor Xianxia, who had dominated the Sui dynasty for 200 years? The Quanjin Seven felt their hearts tremble. A land immortal had truly descended upon Quanjin, and from the looks of it, there was more than one. In that moment, they understood the sequence of events. The Western venom Aoyang Feng was merely a pawn, used to test whether Ning Changge was truly present. The real threat lay with these two land immortals. Looking at Aoyang Feng's lifeless body, the crowd was filled with complex emotions. One of the Song dynasty's 5 greats, yet before these exalted land immortals, he was nothing more than a pawn to be manipulated at will. Indeed, beneath the land immortals, all were ants. Even Wang Chongyang fell silent. If he were in Aoyang Feng's position, he would fare no better. For the first time, he felt an unprecedented desire for power. Now that his source injury was healed and his lifespan ample, he believed that one day he too would reach the land immortal realm. The crowd's emotions were turbulent, but Ning Changge remained as calm and serene as ever. During his lecture, he hadn't released his spiritual sense. As soon as Aoyang Feng appeared, his spirit god had already enveloped Mount Zhongnan. Xianxia and the Golden Wheel's movements were clear to him. He even noticed a white-robed heroine and a young girl rushing over from the other side of the mountain, likely Lin Kaying and Li Machu. They must have heard the commotion from the tomb of the living dead and come to investigate. But Ning Changge paid them no mind. He simply turned his gaze to the two figures who had suddenly appeared in the Taoist hall. He was already familiar with Xianxia. They had met once on Mount Amei through the spiritual sword, where Ning Changge had severed his limbs, leaving him like a human swine. Now, Xianxia appeared before him, pale but with all limbs intact and his aura stable. Compared to their last encounter on Mount Amei, he seemed no worse off. The other was a tall, thin young monk in a yellow robe, his aura slightly strange but undoubtedly at the land immortal level. Ning Changge hadn't initially recognized him, but the monk introduced himself, and Ning Changge was slightly surprised. "The Golden Wheel, Dharma King?" He quickly realized that the Golden Wheel was likely connected to the unnamed monk from the secret sect who had visited Wudang. "Do you two think you can kill me?" Ning Changge asked with a faint smile, as if he didn't take the two before him seriously. Two land immortals together were not simply a matter of 1 + 1 = 2, and this was why the evil emperor dared to come again. The Quanjin disciples were captivated by Ning Changge's composure, his calm confidence soothing their anxiety. Xianxia snorted coldly, fixing his gaze on the young Taoist before him. Strictly speaking, this was his first time seeing Ning Changge. Last time, the young Taoist hadn't even appeared, yet 3 spiritual swords had severed his limbs, leaving a lasting shadow. If not for the secret sect seeking cooperation, he would never have agreed. Most importantly, he had learned that Wudang's Zhang Sanfeng had ascended to the Earth Immortal realm. If he didn't seize this opportunity to catch Ning Changge alone, revenge might never be possible once he returned to Wudang. "You severed my limbs last time. I swear I won't be human if I don't avenge this. There's nothing to say between us. If not for you ruining my plans and stopping me from retrieving the sword, I'd have long since returned to my peak." His eyes filled with killing intent. He hadn't come to make peace. Being driven away by a junior in front of the world's heroes was his life's shame, far worse than his defeat by the sword demon a century ago. Only blood could wash it away. The Golden Wheel Dharma King clasped his hands, his eyelids drooping slightly. "My master was buried in Wudang's heavenly tomb. I wished to retrieve his remains, but given the little immortal's nature, I knew you wouldn't agree, so I had no choice but to resort to this." The crowd understood. He had come for his master's remains. The Quanjin Seven looked to Ning Changge. This wasn't an irreconcilable hatred. If they were in his place, they might agree to the monk's request, leaving only one enemy to deal with. But Ning Changge simply nodded. "Your master offended Wudang. Being buried in the heavenly tomb was a grace." His meaning was clear. Ning Changge wouldn't abandon his principles for anyone. The golden wheel took a deep breath, his sides seeming to roar with dragons and elephants. His once emaciated body filled out, and he solemnly said, "In that case, please instruct me, little immortal." The evil Emperor Xianxia also stepped forward, his aura exploding in an instant. Waves of demonic energy surged forth. He had cultivated the Tao heart-planting demon to its highest level, capable of clouding minds. Just seeing the rolling demonic clouds made the Quanzhen disciples' faces pale, their eyes filled with discomfort. They couldn't help but feel nervous. Can the little immortal handle these two? Though the little immortal severed the evil emperor's limbs on Mount Amei, the two of them together are likely much stronger than before. Seeing the little immortal's calm demeanor, there should be no problem. Let's not forget how formidable the little immortal is. Even if he can't win, he can surely protect himself. Led by Wang Chongyang, the Quanzhen disciples retreated further. They had no place in such a battle and could only watch Ning Changge with bated breath. Ning Changge, in his white Taoist robe, sat calmly on the Taoist platform, his expression unruffled. In contrast, Xianxia and the Golden Wheel felt immense pressure. Seeing Ning Changge for the first time, his otherworldly aura made their hearts race. Especially Xianxia, who seemed to see spiritual swords flashing behind Ning Changge, causing his pupils to contract instinctively. Unable to bear the suffocating atmosphere, he shouted, "Buzz!" Waves of demonic energy surged from his body, and in an instant, rolling demonic clouds enveloped the Quanzhen sect, casting it into darkness. A land immortal's casual strike could stir the heavens. Massive demonic energy gathered around Xianxia, forming a terrifying demonic body in an instant. The Tenjiang true demon body. This was the ultimate skill Xianxia had used on Mount Amei. Now he unleashed it immediately, showing his deep fear of Ning Changge. Ning Changge smiled faintly. He could see the progress in Xianxia's Tenjiang true demon body. Clearly, after his defeat by the three-talent sword formation, Xianxia had made improvements. His expression remained calm. Meanwhile, the Golden Wheel Dharma King radiated golden light, with dragons and elephants roaring around him. It was similar to the unnamed monk's dragon-elephant golden body from the secret sect, but clearly more advanced, comparable to the sweeping monk's golden Buddha true body. In the crowd's shocked eyes, the two land immortals went all out from the start. Wang Chongyang couldn't help but tense up. Lin Kaying, who had just arrived, was also shocked. She quickly shielded Li Machu and retreated, fearing the residual waves might harm them. She had sensed the commotion at the Quanzhen sect, but hadn't expected a battle between land immortals. Boom! A thunderous roar erupted as Xianxia struck first. His Tenjiang demonic body reached out from the demonic clouds, a massive palm of true energy engraved with intricate patterns, the mark of the demonic seed. The sky-covering demonic palm slammed toward Ning Changge. The Golden Wheel followed closely. Their sole aim was to suppress Ning Changge. 2 against 1, they felt no shame. The Golden Wheel's body was enveloped in dragon-elephant golden light, swelling with unparalleled divine power. His punch, accompanied by dragons and elephants, shook the entire Quanzhen sect. The sheer force caused destruction even through the air. A palm and a punch, the two land immortals attacked at their peak, holding nothing back. The sky-covering demonic palm carried black demonic clouds, while the dragon-elephant divine punch brought a sea of Buddha light. The power was terrifying. The Quanzhen disciples' hearts were in their throats. They had never seen such power and couldn't be sure if the little immortal could withstand it. Yet Ning Changge remained serene. His eyes sparkled with insight, observing the paths of the two. Both follow the path of combining body and true energy, each with unique wonders. Not bad. He casually commented, watching the incoming attacks, and simply exhaled. In the next moment, 5 brilliant beams shot forth, transforming into spiritual swords that soared into the sky. Gold, green, blue, red, and yellow. The spiritual swords, having recently transformed, were revealed to the world for the first time. The 5-element spiritual swords vibrated joyfully, celebrating their emergence, spinning continuously. The crowd watched in awe, as if seeing 5 playful children, filling them with a sense of wonder. Ning Changge smiled. As spiritual artifacts, the 5-element spiritual swords were indeed like children. They needed no guidance. The 5 swords transformed into beams of light, slashing toward the incoming demonic palm and Buddha punch. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The air was filled with a hair-raising sound as the swords whistled through the sky, their sharp cries echoing. Lin Keiying's face turned pale, and she quickly used her true energy to shield herself and Li Machu's ears. When the sword's whistling ceased, the crowd looked up. The sky-covering demonic palm and dragon elephant Buddha punch had stopped midair, failing to descend. Confused, they soon gasped in shock. The once solid demonic palm and Buddha punch shattered in an instant, sliced into countless fragments by the dense sword light, dispersing into the heavens. Xianxia and the Golden Wheel's eyes were filled with gravity, even fear. They felt an overwhelming pressure from the 5 spiritual swords, especially Xianxia. He had once been close to 3 of them, but now the 3 had become 5, their aura surging. How could he have progressed so much in such a short time? How is this possible? How can there be such a monstrous person in the world? But the 5 elements spiritual swords gave them no time to ponder. Without Ning Changge's control, they charged at Xianxia. Buzz, radiance burst from the swords, piercing the clouds, dispelling the demonic clouds. In the crowd's shocked eyes, the golden edge sword transformed into the Zheng metal white tiger, the Qingyuan sword into the Yiwood green dragon, the Bai Shui sword into the Ren water black tortoise, the Chixiao sword into the Cayenne fire vermilion bird, and the Haodu sword into the Wu earth killin. The 5 divine beasts charged at the 2 with overwhelming might. Their power was unmatched, the 5 divine beasts dominating. Before these awe-inspiring divine beasts, Xianxia's Tenjiang demonic body seemed insignificant, and the Golden Wheel even more so. Xianxia couldn't help but shout in anger. Golden Wheel, is this the secret sex information intelligence? He felt deceived. This power was far beyond what had been described as merely stronger than the sweeping monk. The Golden Wheel didn't answer. His obsession drove him to retrieve his master's remains at any cost, even if it meant facing such terror. Despite his fear, he resolutely struck at the 5 divine beasts with a Buddha palm. Xianxia was furious, but now wasn't the time for internal strife. His demonic energy surged as he struck with his palms, but it was all in vain. The divine beasts spewed divine fire and strange water, their sword energy overwhelming, completely suppressing them. Their vast true energy was confined to a tiny space. Ning Changge didn't even need to act. Releasing the 5 elements spiritual swords was enough to easily suppress the 2 land immortals. Such power was truly astounding. The Quanjin disciples, having moved past their initial tension, were now completely relaxed, their respect for Ning Changge deepening. Ning Changge shook his head slowly, his insight observing. The true energy essence of the 2 was clear to him, and flashes of inspiration danced in his mind. Their paths might offer him some enlightenment, but he needed to observe more closely. Previously, he had gained the golden armor aspect divine power from Xianxia's severed limbs and the golden spirit's body. Now, seeing Xianxia's Tenjiang demonic body in person, he might further advance the golden armor divine power. With this thought, Ning Changge finally acted. He formed a sword seal with his hand and pointed. The previously relaxed 5 elements spiritual swords instantly flared with light, their aura surging, their sharpness piercing the sky. 5 element sword formation rise. Now the transformed 5 element spiritual swords formed a 5 element sword formation, its power only growing stronger. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The 5 element spiritual swords vibrated at high speed, the 5 divine beasts soaring, guarding the 5 directions of east, west, south, north, and center. The 5 giant swords shot into the sky, enveloping Xianxia. He was horrified, not understanding why Ning Changge targeted him alone. The 5 element sword formation encased him, reminding him of the fear he had felt on Mount Emei. Golden Wheel, save me, he roared to the heavens, a hint of panic in his voice. The pressure of the 5 element sword formation was far more terrifying than the 3 talent sword formation. He knew he couldn't withstand it, and this time he couldn't even use the heavenly demon disintegration technique to escape. With the 5 elements complete, space was sealed. He couldn't escape. The Golden Wheel was equally shocked, stunned by the sudden change. He knew he had to act. If Xianxia fell, his fate wouldn't be much better. With this thought, he roared, a golden relic floating before his chest. A hint of hesitation crossed his face before he resolutely swallowed it. His aura surged. The Golden Wheel soared, ready to break the 5 elements sword formation, but suddenly a nameless fear gripped his heart. Ning Changge flicked his fingers twice. 2 flames shot toward him, one deep blue, the other pale, reflecting in the Golden Wheel's eyes, causing him to gasp. He felt a soul-shaking suffocation from the flames. The pure yang true fire burned true energy, while the pure yin true fire burned the primordial spirit. Together they extinguished both energy and spirit. TLN, Zam, it's so op. The golden wheel instinctively retreated, watching Xiang Yushin trapped in the sword formation, helpless. He was now struggling to protect himself. Ning Changge glanced at the golden wheel entangled with the two flames, dismissing him. His gaze turned to Xiang Yushin, whose face was grim. His eyes sparkled with insight, the observation eyes at their peak. Ning Changge chuckled softly, "Xiang Yushin, let me see your limits." Xiang Yushin was terrified as Ning Changge spoke, and the five elements sword formation above changed. Boom, a massive five-colored sword energy, imbued with the power of the five elements, crashed down. The scene before them was eerily reminiscent of what had transpired on Mount Imei. Back then, it was the three-talent sword formation. Now it had evolved into the five-element sword formation. The five-colored sword energy shimmered with a terrifying brilliance, like celestial swords descending from the heavens. Wang Chongyang stood in shock, his eyes fixed on the five-element sword qi. He felt that no swordsmanship in the world could compare to this, and even the most legendary swordsmen would be powerless before such sword energy. Lin Kaying was equally dumbfounded. She had always been proud, considering herself exceptionally talented, and even believed that one day she would reach the land immortal realm. But now her eyes were filled only with the towering sword energy before her, so dazzling, so overwhelming. As for Li Machu, she was completely stunned. With her limited cultivation, she couldn't grasp the profoundness of the scene, only feeling that the sword energy was vast and terrifying. The crowd was shocked, but none more so than Xiang Yushin, who was locked onto by the sword energy. He wanted to dodge, but the terrifying sharpness of the five elements sword qi had already locked him in place. The sword formation sealed the void, leaving him no room to maneuver. In other words, he had no choice but to face it head-on. Ah! Xiang Yushin roared toward the sky, the extreme pressure of life and death forcing him to vent his emotions. His hair was disheveled, his face twisted in fury, and his Tenjiang true demon body roared as well. The surging demonic energy formed a massive demonic skull that rushed to meet the sword energy. Under the pressure of life and death, he forcibly pushed his potential to its limits, making this attack even more terrifying than the previous one. Boom! A deafening explosion rang out. The massive five-colored sword energy collided with the demonic skull, but there was no contest. The sword energy's sharpness was unmatched, and in an instant it obliterated the demonic skull. Xiang Yushin's eyes were filled with shock as he roared in unwillingness. No! But the sword energy didn't kill him outright. It merely severed his left arm. His left arm, filled with demonic energy and true energy, fell to the ground, blood splattering everywhere. Xiang Yushin's already pale face turned even paler, blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were dazed, unable to comprehend why Ning Changge hadn't killed him with a single strike. Could it be that Ning Changge intended to spare him? Instinctively, he looked toward Ning Changge. His heart trembled. What kind of gaze was that? High above, indifferent, as if looking at an ant. Ning Changge's eyes flickered with an unknown light, his observation eyes active, focusing on Xiang Yushin's severed left arm. The way true energy and the physical body combined was laid bare before him, and a series of insights flooded his mind. Compared to the severed limbs Jai Zaiaofu had brought back, observing the process in real time was far more enlightening. Not enough. Continue. Ning Changge's mind was filled with realizations, but he felt there was still something missing. His voice was calm, but to Xiang Yushin, it sounded like the voice of a demon from hell, causing him to shudder involuntarily. As Ning Changge's words fell, the five-element sword formation above stirred once more. Another five-colored sword energy began to form. Seeing the same terrifying sword energy, Xiang Yushin couldn't help but roar in anger. Ning Changge, if you want to kill me, just do it. Why humiliate me like this? I told you I want to see your limits. Another towering sword energy descended. Xiang Yushin's eyes were bloodshot, but his intense desire to survive pushed him to fight back. However, his hatred for Ning Changge only grew stronger. He swore that if he survived, he would be an eternal enemy of Wudang, even if he couldn't defeat Ning Changge. He would target Wudang's disciples. At that moment, his hatred made him abandon the pride he once held as the evil emperor. But it was futile. Hatred might fuel strength, but the vast gap between them couldn't be bridged. The sword energy fell. His right arm was severed at the root, leaving the Chongyang true demon body as an armless demon. Ning Changge observed the exposed intricacies of Xiang Yushin's path, the combination of true energy and the physical body laid bare. To combine the physical body and true energy to this extent, you can be considered a genius, he calmly commented, his mind filled with flashes of inspiration. True energy was the pinnacle of martial power, capable of influencing the forces of heaven and earth. From the combination of true energy and the physical body, Ning Changge gained inspiration. If spiritual energy could be combined with the physical body, it might lead to the creation of an even more astonishing physical divine power. Previously, he had created the golden armor aspect by studying Xiang Yushin's severed limbs and observing the golden spirit's body. While it was strong, it was more suited to the golden spirit. Still not enough. Ning Changge pointed again, and this time 2 beams of 5-colored sword energy descended. The surroundings fell into complete silence, with only the roar of the sword energy echoing. Whether it was Wang Chongyang, Lin Kaying, or the Quanjin 7, they all stood with their mouths agape, filled with disbelief. The scene before them was simply too shocking. What were they witnessing? The mighty evil emperor of the Sui dynasty was being toyed with, reduced to helpless roars. They had expected Ning Changge to defeat or even kill Xiang Yushin, but the process was far beyond their imagination. It was almost too easy. The golden-wheeled Dharma King was equally terrified. He wanted to escape, but the 2 flames before him were already keeping him occupied. The demonic energy formed fists and palms to meet the sword energy. Under the pressure of life and death, he spared no effort, even spitting blood to fuel his attacks. But it was all in vain. The 5-colored sword energy, like a celestial pillar, descended steadily. 2 beams of sword energy, severing both his legs. Blood splattered as the Chongyang true demon body was reduced to a limbless husk once again. The scene was exactly like what had happened on Mount Amei, only this time it was even easier. It was only now that Xiang Yushin realized how blinded by hatred he had been. Last time, Ning Changge hadn't even been present, yet he had been forced to flee in disgrace. What made him think that adding the golden wheel would allow him to defeat Ning Changge? Xiang Yushin laughed bitterly. Ning Changge's gaze remained indifferent as he continued to observe the combination of true energy and the physical body within the Chongyang true demon body. Finally, he gained enlightenment. Under the astonished and reverent gazes of the Quanjin disciples, a faint 5-colored light began to flow across Ning Changge's body. Unseen to them, the 5-colored sapling in his dantian swayed gently. System notification, using the golden armor aspect as a foundation. And after closely observing the combination of Xiang Yushin's physical body and true energy, you have gained inspiration. By combining the 5-element spiritual energy with the physical body, you have created the immortal Tao technique, 5 elements aspect. A smile appeared on Ning Changge's lips. He had finally succeeded. The 5 elements aspect was a step beyond the golden armor aspect and was far more suited to him. With this realization, a natural sense of joy arose within him. His gaze fell on Xiang Yushin. The Chongyang true demon body had been reduced to a limbless husk, and Xiang Yushin's true form was revealed, looking utterly miserable. His face was filled with despair, but Ning Changge remained unmoved. Xiang Yushin no longer had any value, so there was no need to continue. Slowly severing Xiang Yushin's limbs had been purely for observation. Ning Changge had no interest in torturing his enemies. Without needing to lift a hand, the spiritual swords, sensing his intent, let out a resonant hum. The 5 divine beasts roared from the sky, and under Xiang Yushin's gaze of relief, they descended upon him. Buzz. The sky was filled with sword energy, and radiant light erupted. When the light faded and the commotion ceased, the 5-element spiritual swords returned to Ning Changge's side. The crowd looked over and collectively gasped. There was nothing left of the evil emperor, not even a trace. The mighty evil emperor of the Sui dynasty, Xiang Yushin, had perished. A land immortal, obliterated so thoroughly that not even a speck remained. The crowd was utterly numb. Did I just witness a land immortal die before my eyes? Impossible. Didn't you see that the little immortal had no intention of pursuing him? A land immortal who dominated for 200 years. Just died like that? To kill so easily? Just how strong is the little immortal? The crowd felt dizzy, overwhelmed by the sheer shock of it all. They even doubted their own eyes. How could a land immortal die so easily? But soon their doubts vanished as their eyes widened in disbelief. That's a heavenly phenomenon. Lin Kaying couldn't help but exclaim, drawing Wang Chongyang and the others' attention to her and Li Machu. But no one cared about that at the moment. Above the Quanjin sect, dark clouds gathered and a torrential downpour began. Thunder echoed across the sky, heard far and wide, as if the heavens themselves were mourning Xianxia's passing. When a land immortal ascended, it was accompanied by a heavenly phenomenon, sensed by those above the heaven-man realm. Likewise, when a land immortal perished, the heavens also reacted. At that moment, throughout the Song dynasty, any expert above the heaven-man realm paused, staring dumbfounded at the sky, at the direction from which the heavenly phenomenon emanated. Their hearts filled with disbelief. A land immortal has fallen? In an instant, the Song dynasty was thrown into turmoil. Countless people rushed toward the source, eager to discover which land immortal had perished. If other heaven-man experts and land immortals could sense it, there was no doubt that the three present on Mount Zhongnan could as well. Wang Chongyang and Lin Kaying exchanged glances, seeing the shock in each other's eyes. Meanwhile, the Golden Wheel Dharma King, still entangled with the two flames, was equally horrified. TLN? Elmao, he just looked like a dead sentence prisoner. He had been trying to sense Xianxia's situation, but the eerie pale flames had burned away his senses, leaving him blind and trapped, forced to battle the flames in a confined space. His dragon elephant golden light occasionally flared, but the flames were endless, rendering his efforts futile. Now, with the heavenly phenomenon manifesting, an overwhelming sense of dread filled his heart. He realized, Xianxia had fallen. How could this happen so quickly? The Golden Wheel's eyes were filled with disbelief. He knew the evil emperor's strength. Though not at his peak, Xianxia still had a deep foundation. How could he have been slain in just a few breaths? He considered himself only slightly stronger than Xianxia. Now, with Xianxia dead, how could he possibly face Ning Changge alone? His mind raced, his dragon elephant golden light rapidly retracting, forming a protective golden body. He dared not make any more reckless moves. At this point, his only priority was survival. With Xianxia dead, even if he escaped, it would be meaningless. The Golden Wheel stared at the two flames before him, his eyes filled with confusion. Suddenly, the flames dispersed and the world reappeared before him. Instinctively, he looked around. As expected, Xianxia's body was gone, leaving only the heavenly phenomenon raging above. Rain poured down, but his dragon elephant golden light shielded him from it. A bitter smile crept across his face as he looked up at the high platform. His eyes met Ning Changge's calm gaze, and the bitterness deepened. I underestimated the little immortal. The world says the little immortal's combat prowess is unmatched, capable of slaying land immortals even before reaching that realm. Now I see. No one has ever truly pushed the little immortal to his limits. The Golden Wheel's words sent shockwaves through the crowd. They realized he was right. In every battle, Ning Changge's opponents had fallen, always leaving the impression that they were close to pushing him to his limits, but they never quite reached it. The Golden Wheel and Xianxia had dared to challenge him, thinking that even if Ning Changge was strong, he couldn't possibly handle two land immortals at once. But now it was clear they had been wrong. The Golden Wheel couldn't comprehend how such an anomaly could exist in the 9 provinces. Someone who hadn't even reached the land immortal realm, but could kill land immortals as easily as slaughtering chickens. It was simply too absurd. It seems my obsession is finally fading. The Golden Wheel sighed, his eyes filled with sorrow. Even with his deep obsession, he could now clearly see the vast gulf between them. If he and Xianxia together couldn't defeat Ning Changge, and Xianxia had been killed, what hope did he have alone? Ning Changge spoke calmly. So, are you giving up? But the Golden Wheel shook his head resolutely. I left the secret sect with no intention of returning alone. Either I retrieve my master's remains or I die here. Little immortal, I have but one request. Ning Changge's expression remained unchanged. Speak. The Golden Wheel clasped his hands and bowed deeply. If I fall to the little immortal, may I be buried in Wudang's heavenly tomb. Since I cannot bring my master's remains back, I wish to rest beside him, so that I may listen to his teachings even in death. Hearing this, the crowd was moved. Even the Quanjin disciples felt a rare sense of admiration. Whatever else could be said, the Golden Wheel's respect for his master was beyond reproach. Ning Changge nodded lightly. Very well, as you wish. Burying a living Buddha in the heavenly tomb would also aid in the tomb's path evolution. The Golden Wheel's face filled with gratitude. Thank you, little immortal. Then his eyes filled with determination. Now I will give it my all. Please instruct me, little immortal. Clearly, he hadn't completely given up. He wanted to make one last desperate attempt. Perhaps after killing Xianxia, Ning Changge's strength had diminished significantly. The golden wheel stepped forward with a thunderous stomp. It was as if a divine elephant had stepped on the earth, causing all of Mount Zhongnan to shake. His dragon elephant prajna skill had reached its highest level, granting him terrifying strength. Two relics floated before his chest, glowing brightly. One relic was his own, while the other was the one he had swallowed earlier, left behind by a former living Buddha of the secret sect. Boundless golden light radiated from him. To the crowd's astonishment, the two relics began to merge. Ning Changge raised an eyebrow. This was a path to self-destruction, akin to forcibly absorbing another's path. Even a land immortal couldn't withstand the backlash from such an act. Earlier, the golden wheel had merely used the relic to boost his true energy, which would have left some side effects that could be slowly treated. But now, by forcibly merging the relics, even if he defeated Ning Changge, he wouldn't live long afterward. This was truly a fight to the death. He hadn't used this trump card when Xianxia was in danger, but in the blink of an eye, Xianxia had been slain. Now this was his only option. He knew that by using this technique, there were only two possible outcomes. If he defeated Ning Changge, he could rightfully retrieve his master's remains, but he would die shortly after. If he lost, he would die on the spot, though Ning Changge had promised to bury him in the heavenly tomb. Either way, death was inevitable, so he had no more reservations. Behind the golden wheel, as the two relics merged, boundless golden light erupted. Though his aura was unstable, it surged dramatically. The sound of Buddhist chants echoed across Mount Zhongnan, scattering the dark clouds caused by Xianxia's death. Around him, faint images of old monks appeared, chanting sutras. The crowd seemed to witness the golden wheel's journey to becoming a living Buddha. One by one, the old monks performed a ritual, bestowing their knowledge upon the young monk. The young monk endured immense suffering, teetering on the brink of death, but in the end he succeeded. As the golden wheel recalled all this, his obsession seemed to fade away. He faintly heard the voice of the Grand Dharma King. "Foolish child!" The golden wheel awoke from his trance, his gaze steady as he looked at Ning Changge on the high platform. "Little immortal, please instruct me." He was determined to win. Even if it meant dying, he would return to the secret sect with whatever remained of his body, to give them an answer. The crowd watched the golden wheel Dharma King, and through the chanting of the old monks behind him, they seemed to witness his transformation. Many felt conflicted. Strictly speaking, he wasn't inherently evil, he simply wanted to retrieve his master's remains. But everyone had their own stance, and there was nothing more to say. A battle was inevitable. The golden wheel slowly extended his right fist, and the roar of dragons and elephants echoed across Mount Zhongnan. The winds howled, and the skies churned. If not for a faint layer of spiritual light covering the area, the entire Quanjin sect might have been torn apart. Even his opening stance was terrifying. It had to be said, the Golden Wheel's combat power was likely above that of Xianxia. Though he had only recently ascended to the land immortal realm, the power he gained from merging with another relic made him formidable. Even Ning Changge took him a bit more seriously. "Not bad," Ning Changge commented lightly, his observation eyes piercing through everything, focusing on the golden wheel. He had seen the dragon elephant golden body before, used by the unnamed monk from the secret sect. However, the golden wheel's dragon elephant Buddha body was far superior. As the golden wheel punched forward, streams of white energy exploded outward, accompanied by golden light, as dragons and elephants roared toward Ning Changge. A massive golden fist imprint hung in the air, accompanied by dragons and elephants, its power unparalleled. The Quanjin disciples were shocked, but this time, having seen what happened to the evil emperor, they had unwavering faith in Ning Changge. Their eyes were fixed on him, eagerly awaiting his response. Ning Changge moved. He simply raised his right hand, and a single finger slowly descended. In the next moment, the heavens shifted. The forces of nature surged wildly, and the five elements' spiritual swords resonated with each other. Brilliant five-colored light gathered at Ning Changge's fingertip, and in the blink of an eye, it transformed into a massive finger, shimmering with the light of the five elements. This wasn't just a simple accumulation of spiritual energy. It was a mystical combination. It was the divine power Ning Changge had just comprehended from observing Xianxia, the five elements aspect. or rather, a single finger of the five elements aspect. If Ning Changge were to fully manifest the power of the aspect, his entire body would transform into a colossal figure with boundless power. But the golden wheel wasn't worth such an effort. A single finger was enough. Boom. The massive finger, glowing with the light of the five elements, pressed down on the golden fist imprint. A deafening explosion rang out, and the golden dragons and elephants accompanying the fist were instantly crushed, shattered into countless fragments of golden light. The five elements' light then surged forward, swallowing everything in its path. Though the power of the finger had diminished, it still carried an unstoppable force as it pressed down on the golden wheel. The crowd held their breath. Ning Changge's attacks were always awe-inspiring. Every divine power he used was a visual spectacle. The crowd marveled. Only the golden wheel remained solemn. He clasped his hands together, chanting sutras as his body radiated light. Dragons and elephants formed around him, filled with divine power, charging toward the massive finger. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of explosions echoed like thunder as the dragons and elephants were crushed one by one. With each dragon or elephant that was destroyed, the golden wheel's face grew paler, and he took a step back. A total of 33 dragons and elephants soared into the sky. Only then was the five elements aspect's finger finally dissipated. The golden wheel had retreated 33 steps, his face as pale as gold paper, and he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Ning Changge remained silent. She had always prided herself on her unparalleled talent, but witnessing this battle made her realize how small her world had been. She had been living in the tomb of the living dead, unaware of the true state of the world. From the murmurs of the Quanzhen disciples, she had learned who this young Taoist was. Wudang's little immortal. He truly is like a living immortal. Her eyes were filled with awe. This was the first time she had heard Ning Changge's name, and everything she saw had left a profound impact on her. As for Li Machu, she was even more stunned, her wide eyes staring blankly. The scene was eerily quiet. The golden wheel felt a bitter taste in his mouth, but his gaze remained resolute. "Death is all that remains," he whispered to himself. His dragon-elephant Buddha body radiated light once more, and his entire being seemed like an ancient dragon-elephant, charging forward with overwhelming force. This time he was ready to fight to the death, his body rushing toward Ning Changge. Ning Changge remained seated on the Taoist platform, his expression calm. His eyes gleamed with insight as he observed the dragon-elephant Buddha body studying the golden wheel's path. Though the golden wheel was powerful, his path was one of forced enlightenment through the secret sects, rituals, and the merging of relics. His path lacked any profound originality. Still, it wasn't without value to Ning Changge. I already possessed two of the Samadhi true fires, the true fire of vital energy and the true fire of the primordial spirit. All that remains is the true fire of essence, which burns the essence of the body. It must come from the physical body itself. Today, I will complete the triad of true fires using you. A flash of realization crossed Ning Changge's mind. He had once used true fire to burn the bodies of the unnamed monk and Kongwen's Buddha body on Tianzhu Peak. Now burning the golden wheel's Buddha body would complete the set. As the golden wheel charged toward him, Ning Changge flicked his fingers. A blue and a white flame transformed into two dragons, surging forward with far greater power than before. The golden wheel, who had been charging with great momentum, let out a startled cry and immediately retreated. Even from a distance, he could feel his Buddha body and soul trembling. The true fire of vital energy burned true energy, and the true fire of the primordial spirit burned the soul. Though the dragon-elephant Buddha body focused on the physical body, it couldn't withstand the burning of these two true fires. Under the crowd's astonished gaze, the golden light of the dragons and elephants was reduced to ashes by the fiery dragons. The golden wheel punched and struck with all his might, but each time he was forced back. Step by step he retreated. Finally, the two fiery dragons encircled him. He sat down, his dragon-elephant Buddha body radiating Buddha light, and the sound of chanting sutras echoed through the sky. He was preparing to endure the flames. The fiery dragons roared, coiling around him like chains, wrapping tightly around the dragon-elephant Buddha body. The two forces began to clash. Arg, the golden wheel's eyes bulged, his face twisted in agony. The pain of the true fires burning him was unbearable, and he couldn't help but let out a low growl. He could feel his true energy evaporating. The blue flame was like an invisible demon, instantly dissolving any true energy it touched. The white flame was equally terrifying. Earlier, when the white flame had barely touched him, he had felt his Buddha mind weaken, and his brain had been racked with pain as if his soul were being torn apart. He had to devote 60% of his energy to resisting the white flame. Only now did he realize that the two true fires had not been at full power when they had been holding him back earlier. Sweat poured from his forehead, only to be instantly evaporated. His low growls of pain sent chills down everyone's spines. If a land, immortal-level living Buddha couldn't endure the pain, it was impossible to imagine how excruciating it must be. Even Wang Chongyang shivered involuntarily. He looked at Ning Changge. The Ning Changge who had lectured the Quanzhen disciples earlier seemed like a Taoist sage, but now he was like an offended immortal. The wrath of an immortal was unbearable. Wang Chongyang was filled with awe and gratitude. How fortunate he was to have formed even the slightest bond with such a person. If not for their chance encounter 10 years ago, he would never have had any connection with someone like Ning Changge. The Quanzhen disciples were filled with reverence. They looked at Ning Changge with eyes full of admiration. They couldn't help but think how wonderful it would be if the little immortal were their junior uncle. For a moment, they were filled with envy for the Wudang disciples. Ning Changge's hand moved, forming seals. The true fires burned the dragon-elephant Buddha body. In his mind, his understanding of the true fire of essence grew more complete. Taoist principles flowed through his heart, and countless insights blossomed, forming into a coherent whole. His eyes gleamed with clarity. A smile of genuine satisfaction appeared on his lips as his Tao reached a new level. System notification. Using the true fire of vital energy and the true fire of the primordial spirit as a foundation, and by burning the Buddha body, you have gained insight into the essence of the human body. You have created the immortal Tao technique, Yin-Yang True Fire. The fusion of yin and yang resulted in the true fire of essence. As Ning Changge's understanding solidified, a change occurred with the golden wheel. The blue and white fiery dragons coiled around the dragon-elephant Buddha body suddenly paused, and then a portion of them began to merge. In the crowd's astonished eyes, a third fiery dragon appeared. A purple flame emerged, and the three fiery dragons roared silently, filling the air with awe. The golden wheel felt a chill run down his spine, as if the purple flame were his nemesis. And indeed it was. The Buddha body and golden body techniques were all physical body arts. While the true fire of vital energy and the true fire of the primordial spirit were dangerous, they couldn't compare to the true fire of essence, which was perfectly suited to countering such techniques. The golden wheel had managed to hold out until now only because his dragon-elephant Buddha body was exceptionally sturdy. But now, faced with the yin-yang true fire, he was finished. Buzz. The purple fiery dragon surged, becoming the dominant force. It looked at the dragon-elephant Buddha body as if it were a feast, rushing forward with unstoppable force. ARGHHH, WORGGHHH. The golden wheel's eyes bulged, and his face twisted in agony. The moment the purple flame touched his body, the once impenetrable dragon-elephant Buddha body began to melt, unable to resist. Unbearable pain consumed him. He could only chant sutras in his mind, trying to distract himself from the agony. But it was futile. The terrifying power of the true fire of essence was fully displayed against techniques like the Buddha body and golden body. Under the crowd's horrified gaze, the golden wheel's flesh melted away layer by layer, like a candle melting in the heat. His Buddha body was destroyed, and with the three true fires combined, he had no chance of resistance. His flesh was destroyed, his true energy evaporated, and his soul withered. A golden skeleton appeared, with only his head still barely moving. He looked toward Ning Changge, his mouth opening and closing, silently pleading for his remains to be taken to the heavenly tomb. Ning Changge nodded slowly. The true fires surged, and the last of the golden wheel's flesh was incinerated. All that remained was a gleaming golden skeleton lying in the Quanzhen Taoist hall. Around it, the blue, white, and purple flames flickered, filling the air with reverence. Another land immortal had fallen. The crowd swallowed hard. In just one day, they had witnessed the deaths of two land immortals. It was like something out of a fairy tale. These were land immortals, the pinnacle of martial power in the 9 provinces. In the past, just seeing one was a rare event, let alone witnessing two die before their very eyes. The little immortal truly is a once-in-a-century, no, once-in-a-millennium genius. His combat power is simply beyond belief. It's hard to imagine that he's only 10 years old and already possesses such terrifying strength. I can't even fathom what his limits are. to suppress 2 land immortals with a wave of his hand. Even among land immortals, he must be one of the strongest. He hasn't even reached the land immortal realm yet. When he does, will there be anyone in the 9 provinces who can stand against him? The crowd was filled with awe. The day's events had left them utterly shaken. When legends unfold before your eyes, the impact is far greater than simply hearing about them. Ning Changge was equally stunned. She exchanged a glance with her disciple, Li Machu, both of them filled with disbelief. The little immortal is only 10 years old, and he's still just in the Heaven Man realm? Ning Changge sensed the Heaven Man true energy within her, and for a moment she felt as though her own cultivation was a joke. The crowd was in shock. Meanwhile, once again, dark clouds gathered over Mount Xianxia, and heavy rain poured down as thunder rumbled. The heavenly phenomenon of a land immortal's death appeared once more on Mount Xianxia, and perhaps because it was the second time in such a short period, the phenomenon was even more intense. The crowd could only stand in silence, watching in awe. At the same time, the heavenly phenomenon spread across the Song dynasty. Hearing the mournful cries of the heavens, all experts above the Heaven Man realm were stunned, almost doubting their senses. It wasn't until they felt the tremors of the heavenly forces that they realized it was real. In such a short time, before news of the first death had even spread, another land immortal had fallen. What on earth was happening? The land immortals gazed toward the Chongyang sect in shock. They could roughly discern the direction, but how could the Chongyang sect, whose strongest member was only a top-tier heaven man, possibly kill 2 land immortals? Could it be that 2 land immortals had fought, and after barely killing one, the victor had succumbed to their injuries? Curiosity and anxiety filled their hearts, and some even set out to investigate. In an instant, the top experts of the Song dynasty were on the move. But the one responsible for all this, Ning Changge, remained calm. His gaze fell on the 3 fiery dragons, and he felt a twinge of regret. Unfortunately, I couldn't complete the Samadhi True Fire. It seems I'll have to wait until I reach the foundation establishment stage to merge the 3 true fires. Only then will it become a true divine power. He wasn't too disappointed, though. With a wave of his hand, the flames dissipated. He then looked at the golden wheel's skeleton. Faint golden light flickered around it, and the low rumble of dragons and elephants could be heard. He waved his hand again, and the skeleton was stored in his storage ring. Since he had promised to bury the golden wheel in the heavenly tomb, he would honor that promise. A relic fell into Ning Changge's hand. Due to the merging process, it was somewhat unstable, but it was still a valuable spiritual item. Ning Changge smiled and put it away. Finally, he turned to Wang Chongyang and said apologetically, "Because of me, the Chongyang sect was affected. I hope you won't hold it against me." Strictly speaking, this was indeed due to his presence. If he hadn't been here, the 2 land immortals wouldn't have come to the Chongyang sect. Wang Chongyang quickly waved his hands. "Chang, what are you saying? The entire Chongyang sect regrets only that we were powerless to help and could only watch as you faced the enemy alone." He had only just begun to recover from the shock and now felt a bit ashamed. In the face of the overwhelming power of the land immortals, even though he had reached the 7th level of the Heaven Man realm, it had been useless. Ning Changge merely smiled. He didn't blame the Chongyang sect. His mood hadn't been affected by the attacks from Xianxia and the Golden Wheel. In fact, he was in a good mood, having created the 5 elements aspect and the true fire of essence. The gains had been substantial. Now that this matter is settled, it's time for me to take my leave. As soon as Ning Changge spoke, the Chongyang disciples became anxious. Wang Chongyang sighed, "I knew this day would come, but I didn't expect it to be so soon. Since that's the case, I can only wish you a smooth journey, Changge. My master's centenary celebration is coming up soon. I hope you'll honor us with your presence," Ning Changge said with a smile. Wang Chongyang nodded repeatedly. "Of course, the Chongyang sect will definitely attend Zhang Zhenren's celebration," Ning Changge smiled. "In that case, I'll head to Peach Blossom Island to invite Senior Huang. I'll take my leave now. If anyone comes to inquire about today's events, feel free to tell them the truth." He knew that the commotion today would attract attention, so he mentioned it in advance. He wasn't concerned about it. Wang Chongyang simply nodded. The crowd watched Ning Changge with reluctance. But Ning Changge simply smiled, his white Taoist robe fluttering like a cloud as he departed gracefully. With a wave of his hand, he had suppressed 2 land immortals, and now, with a flick of his sleeve, he left without a care. How carefree and elegant. The crowd couldn't help but shout, "We respectfully send off the little immortal." As they watched the figure in white disappear into the distance, everyone's eyes were filled with admiration and reverence. To suppress two land immortals with a wave of his hand and then leave so gracefully, without stirring the slightest ripple. Such composure was truly like that of a transcendent immortal, leaving all in awe. I once saw the little immortal's spiritual sword in action at Shaolin, suppressing the 18 Arhats formation. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. His comprehension is heaven-defying, and his combat power is unparalleled. It's hard to believe that such a monstrous genius exists in the 9 provinces. Only by witnessing it firsthand can one truly understand the terror and power of the little immortal. The rumors don't even begin to capture it. It's a shame. If only the little immortal were part of our Quanjin sect. Many Quanjin disciples couldn't help but recall the story of how their master had encountered the little immortal at the foot of Mount Hua. They couldn't help but wonder, what if their master had brought the little immortal back? What would things be like now? But Wang Chongyang only sighed and shook his head. He had once thought the same. But upon further reflection, he realized that neither he nor the Quanjin sect had the foundation to support Ning Changge's growth to where he was today. Perhaps it had been the right choice for Ning Changge to follow Zhang Sanfeng. I have a feeling Changge will lead an entire era. Wang Chongyang couldn't help but marvel. Even Ning Changge glanced at him in surprise. She knew Wang Chongyang well, how proud and self-assured he was, even to the point of being somewhat self-absorbed. Yet here he was, praising Ning Changge so highly. It was clear just how much of an impact Ning Changge had made on him. But then again, after witnessing the awe-inspiring events that had just unfolded, she understood. She too had been utterly shaken. Zhang Zhenren's centenary celebration. Perhaps it's time I left the tomb of the living dead and walked the Jianghu again. Staying in that tomb has made me like a frog in a well, unaware that such a talent has emerged in the world. Ning Changge muttered to herself. Without saying much to the others in the Quanjin sect, she took Li Machu and left. Wang Chongyang watched her retreating figure, his hand half raised before he let it fall with a sigh. He could only shake his head. His thoughts then drifted to the agreement made 10 years ago between Zhang Sanfeng, Huang Yaoshi, and himself. Back then, the three had made a pact. He would be Ning Changge's half-master, and Huang Yaoshi's daughter was betrothed to Ning Changge. I wonder, what will Changge choose? Wang Chongyang couldn't help but feel curious. Of course, Ning Changge was unaware of Wang Chongyang's curiosity. He simply strolled leisurely down Mount Jiangnan, heading toward Peach Blossom Island. His visit to the Quanjin sect had been fruitful, despite a small interruption. He had created 2 new true fire techniques and the 5 elements aspect, a powerful physical divine ability. Most importantly, his state of mind had become even more serene. Once his visit to Peach Blossom Island was complete, he would be ready to ascend to the foundation establishment stage. A smile tugged at Ning Changge's lips. He was in a very good mood. Meanwhile, the Jianghu of the Song dynasty was in an uproar. 2 land immortals had fallen on Mount Jiangnan. When the news first spread from a Heaven-Man realm expert, it immediately caused a stir. Countless Jianghu travelers sought to verify the information, and when multiple Heaven-Man experts confirmed it, the truth became undeniable. In no time, the Jianghu was abuzz, with countless people heading toward the Quanjin sect, eager to learn what had transpired. Why had 2 land immortals fallen? Who were these 2 land immortals? When the first group of Jianghu travelers arrived at Mount Jiangnan, they found that the Quanjin disciples were already prepared. Ning Changge had anticipated that the events would cause a stir in the Jianghu, so he had given Wang Chongyang advance notice. Wang Chongyang, of course, complied. The events of that day were recounted in full. The Jianghu travelers were stunned. It wasn't a battle between 2 land immortals, as many had speculated, where both had perished in mutual destruction. Instead, the 2 land immortals had joined forces to kill one man, only to be slain themselves. One was the evil Emperor Xiang Yushan, who had dominated the Sui dynasty for 200 years, and the other was a newly ascended living Buddha from the Mongolian secret sect. Both were powerful, yet they had met such a fate. When the travelers learned who had slain the 2 land immortals, they were left speechless. Wu Deng's little immortal. He hasn't even reached the land immortal realm, yet he can slay 2 land immortals. Every Jianghu traveler gasped in disbelief. This was completely different from the last time when Ning Changge had only heavily injured the evil emperor. This time, he had outright killed 2 land immortals. The implications were entirely different. At first, some doubted the story, but the Quanjin sect simply maintained a believe-it-or-not attitude. Moreover, some people had traced Ning Changge's movements and confirmed that the little immortal had indeed descended the mountain. In no time, the Jianghu was in shock. The news of Ning Changge slaying the evil emperor and the living Buddha on Mount Zhangnan spread rapidly throughout the Song dynasty and beyond. One by one, the land immortals were left in a state of shock and disbelief. Song dynasty, Shaolin Temple. The Shaolin Temple remained half in ruins, a symbol of their willingness to accept punishment. Though the temple had sealed itself off, its information channels remained open. When the news reached Shaolin, did the evil emperor and the living Buddha really die at Ning Changge's hands? Abbot Kongwen couldn't help but ask again. The monk before him, still shaken, nodded bitterly. It was indeed the little immortal of Wudang. There's no doubt about it. At these words, the entire temple fell silent. Many had previously harbored resentment, feeling that a 1,000-year-old sacred ground like Shaolin shouldn't have submitted so easily. But now, it seemed that their decision had been the right one. Had Ning Changge stormed Shaolin, even the Buddha himself might not have been able to stop him. Though the Buddha body had been destroyed, at least they still had their lives, which was far better than the fate of Xiang Yushan and the living Buddha. Inform the monks that for the next 60 years, they are to focus solely on meditation and cultivation, with no stray thoughts. Anyone who disobeys will be dealt with according to temple rules. Kongwen's voice was stern. Ning Changge's terrifying power had left them all trembling. Given their past enmity with him, they were on edge, fearing that Shaolin might give him a reason to strike. The consequences would be unimaginable. In the library pavilion, the sweeping monk sensed everything happening within the temple. Ever since Zhang Sanfeng had destroyed his Buddha body, his vitality had greatly diminished, and now he was utterly silent. Could such a monstrous person really exist in this world? He couldn't help but mutter to himself, his voice filled with shock. Back when he had first descended through Kongwen's body and the relic, Ning Changge had been powerful, but not to the point of inspiring fear. But now, the fact that Ning Changge had slain 2 land immortals was undeniable, forcing the sweeping monk to confront the vast gap between them. Even though Ning Changge had yet to ascend to the land immortal realm, the sweeping monk knew he stood no chance against him. In fact, a sense of relief washed over him. Had Ning Changge come to Shaolin instead of Zhang Sanfeng, he might already be dead. A bitter smile crept across the sweeping monk's lips. He knew his state of mind had been shattered, but there was nothing he could do. For the rest of his life, no matter how hard he tried, he would never return to his peak, let alone advance further. It seems it's time for me to find a successor. With his spirit broken, the sweeping monk was like a candle flickering in the wind. He no longer harbored any thoughts of revenge, knowing that the gap between them was insurmountable. 2 land immortals had joined forces and still been slain. What hope did he have? And now he had no more fight left in him. The misty mountains where the white waterfalls hang. A group of extraordinary Jianghu figures stood atop a cliff. They were members of the Xiaoyao sect. Leading them was none other than the founder of the Xiaoyao sect, Xiaoyazi. Behind him stood Wu Yazi, Li Qiushui, and Li Kanghai, among others. Xiaoyazi had recently emerged from seclusion, only to find that his sect had fallen into disarray. Furious, he had swiftly restored order, using his land immortal status to cleanse the sect. This was why Li Qiushui and Tianchen Tongla were now on good terms. But at this moment, all of them were filled with shock. Even Xiaoyazi wore a grave expression. He looked at Li Qiushui and asked slowly, "Qiushui, are you certain that the little immortal of Wudang slew both the evil emperor and the living Buddha on his own? No one else helped?" There was still a hint of disbelief in his voice. When he had first heard about Ning Changge after emerging from seclusion, he had already been amazed. But now, to hear that the little immortal had slain 2 land immortals, it was simply unbelievable. And these weren't just any opponents. The evil emperor was an old and powerful land immortal, and the living Buddha had mastered the dragon-elephant prajna skill. Even Xiaoyazi wasn't sure he could defeat them both. Li Qiushui replied bitterly, "I've thoroughly investigated. On that day, aside from the little immortal, only Wang Chongyang and Lin Kaying were present, and they are merely heaven man experts." But she didn't need to finish her sentence. Everyone understood what she meant. How could mere heaven man experts intervene in a battle between land immortals? They were all heaven man experts, but they couldn't fathom how someone at the heaven man realm could possess such terrifying combat power. Xiaoyazi sighed deeply. Truly, the younger generation is surpassing the old. I never imagined that after a century in seclusion, such a brilliant figure would emerge in the Jianghu. The shock in his eyes gradually gave way to intense curiosity. He wanted to meet this legendary little immortal and see what kind of person he was. I've heard that Zhang Zhenren of Wudeng will soon celebrate his centenary. I think I'll pay him a visit. As soon as Zhaoyazi finished speaking, his figure vanished. The disciples of the Zhaoyao sect exchanged shocked glances. Their master was going to personally attend Zhang Zhenren's birthday celebration. Song Dynasty Imperial Palace. An elderly man reading a Taoist scripture suddenly raised his head as if listening to something in the distance. His eyes filled with shock. Huang Shang looked toward Mount Zhongnan. It was as if he could see the terrifying battle that had taken place there. 3 land immortals had fought, shaking the heavens and earth. Could this child be a reincarnated soul? His eyes were filled with speculation. Land immortals had a lifespan of 500 years, and even with life-extending techniques, they could only live for a few thousand years at most. Throughout history, many geniuses had sought to break this limit. Some had even developed reincarnation techniques. Though the success rate was low, if one could preserve their true spirit and awaken their past memories in a future life, it was like living a second life. For Ning Changge to slay 2 land immortals while still in the Heavenman realm. His foundation and combat power were so heaven-defying that Huang Shang couldn't help but wonder. But even if he were a reincarnated soul with the foundation of a past life, he shouldn't be this powerful. Huang Shang still couldn't fully understand. Ever since he had compiled the 9 Yin manual, he had gradually become invincible. For years, he had lived in the Song dynasty's imperial palace, quietly contemplating his path. Occasionally, he would travel the Jianghu, meeting many geniuses. He had even encountered reincarnated souls before, but none had been as terrifying as Ning Changge. Strange, very strange, I can't make sense of it, he sighed repeatedly. The Jianghu is becoming harder and harder to understand. With dynasties in turmoil and brilliant emperors constantly rising, the Jianghu was also filled with peerless geniuses. Setting aside those from centuries past, even in the last 100 years, there had been figures like Wang Chongyang of martial Emperor City, Wu Wudi from the Central Plains, and Zhang Sanfeng of Wudeng, all of them exceptionally talented. And now there was the monstrously talented Ning Changge. Is this a great era or a chaotic one? When will the shackles of the 9 provinces be broken? He sighed once more, putting aside his thoughts and returning to his scripture. After a century of reading, it had become second nature to him. He was searching for a path that had never been walked before, but after hundreds of years, his progress had been slow. Ming Dynasty. Not far from Wudeng, the news of Ning Changge slaying 2 land immortals on Mount Zhongnan had already reached the area. In an inn, the air was filled with chatter. Most of it was a mix of shock and joy, as Ning Changge was from Wudeng, a Ming Dynasty sect, and the locals felt a sense of pride. The news spread like wildfire, growing more exaggerated with each retelling. Some even claimed that Ning Changge had killed the evil emperor and the living Buddha with a single glance, leaving not even a trace of them behind. Outside the inn, an old beggar looked serious. Dugu Kyubai had traveled far, reaching the heart of the Ming Dynasty, not far from Wudeng's Tianzhu Peak. Along the way, he had heard countless stories about Ning Changge, but this latest one, it left him truly shaken. To fight 2 and slay 2 land immortals. Dugu Kyubai felt his heart race. It was his sword heart, burning with the desire to face a peerless swordsman. His senses covered the entire city, easily filtering out the exaggerated details. But even so, his eyes grew brighter and brighter. Even if Xiang Yushan wasn't at his peak, he still had a deep foundation. And that living Buddha with his mastery of the dragon-elephant prajna skill possessed unparalleled strength. Yet they both fell to the little immortal. It seems, I don't need to wait for him to ascend to the land immortal realm. Dugu Kyubai's eyes gleamed like a sword. Had he not been restraining himself, his sword intent would have surged into the sky, turning the entire city into a sea of swords. His desire to fight was rising, his battle intent surging. He had first heard of Ning Changge in the Song dynasty and had traveled to the Ming dynasty, intending to wait until Ning Changge reached the land immortal realm before challenging him. But now, it seemed there was no need to wait. Based on Ning Changge's current combat power, he was already worthy of a duel. The thought of facing such a peerless genius made Dugu Kyubai tremble with excitement. He laughed heartily, filled with joy. Some passers-by saw the old beggar laughing like a madman and couldn't help but curse him, their eyes filled with disdain. But Dugu Kyubai paid them no mind, laughing as he slowly made his way toward Wudang. The Jianghu was in turmoil, and the news spread wider and wider. After all, the fall of two land immortals was a monumental event. It had been a long time since a land immortal had fallen in the 9 provinces, and now 2 had fallen at once, both at the hands of a single person. Emperor Zhu Huzhao, Wang Xianxia of martial Emperor City, Qin Shi Huang Yingzheng, Xiangbao of the World Society, Bathsheba, the national teacher of Mongolia. One by one, the land immortals and supreme experts turned their attention toward Ning Changge, shocked by his feat. As the news continued to spread, Ning Changge remained calm as if none of it concerned him. Along the way, he heard people discussing the events, but he simply smiled and moved on. He cared little for fame. He had only asked the Quanzhen sect not to hide the truth to avoid implicating them. That was all. Amidst the rising tide of excitement in the Jianghu, Ning Changge continued his journey step by step. And then, one day, he walked on the waves, gazing at the distant island covered in blooming peach blossoms, and a smile appeared on his lips. Peach Blossom Island. He had finally arrived. Peach Blossom Island lived up to its name. From a distance, the peach blossoms bloomed in brilliant colors, creating a breathtaking scene, like a paradise on earth that could easily enchant anyone. However, everyone in the Jianghu knew that this was the territory of Huang Yaoshi, the Eastern heretic, whose eccentric temperament was infamous. Anyone who entered without permission would face the consequences. Ning Changge walked calmly on the waves, hands behind his back, a smile on his lips. The beauty of the scene before him was indeed pleasing to the heart. He stepped onto Peach Blossom Island, but his gaze was soon drawn to another part of the island. In the peach blossom forest, a young girl, delicate and refined, was practicing swordsmanship under the morning sun. The falling petals danced around her, and her white dress fluttered like that of a young celestial maiden, her temperament ethereal and untouched by the mundane world. It was easy to see that when this girl grew up, she would be a peerless beauty, a woman who could captivate nations. A name naturally came to Ning Changge's mind. Huang Rong, the girl who was betrothed to him. A ripple of emotion stirred in his heart, not because of Huang Rong's beauty, but because of something special about her. Around her there were faint traces of spiritual light flickering. Though it was barely noticeable, Ning Changge's keen senses didn't miss it. That was the fluctuation of spiritual energy. Huang Rong seemed to possess the same unique quality as Jai Zairofu. In fact, she might be even more special than Jai Zairofu. This was the true reason for his surprise. Ning Changge stood quietly in the distance, his observation eyes activated, silently observing. His surprise deepened. After a while, Huang Rong sheathed her sword, raising her hand in a sword gesture to finish her practice. Beads of sweat dotted her forehead, but her eyes sparkled with satisfaction. She couldn't help but think to herself, I really am a genius. In such a short time, I've made even more progress with the Falling Blossom divine sword in this world. Because Feng Heng hadn't died due to the 9-yin manual, Huang Rong didn't reject martial arts. At a young age, she had already reached the innate realm, a testament to her extraordinary talent. Just as a smile appeared on Huang Rong's face, she caught a glimpse of a white-robed figure out of the corner of her eye. Startled, she turned abruptly and saw a young Taoist in white standing some distance away, watching her with a calm smile. You're a strange one, aren't you? Watching someone practice without making a sound, you nearly scared me to death, Huang Rong exclaimed, her curiosity piqued as she studied Ning Changge. The young man before her was strikingly handsome, with an indescribable aura about him. She knew he wasn't from Peach Blossom Island, as she recognized everyone on the island. Her dark eyes flickered with suspicion, and her hand quietly tightened around the sword on her back. Though only 10 years old, Huang Rong was no naive child. Ning Changge, having noticed her small movements, smiled and said, I mean no harm. I've come to visit your father. And who are you? Huang Rong asked, stepping back cautiously. My name is Ning Changge. You might have heard of me, Ning Changge replied. Huang Rong's retreating steps faltered, her eyes widening in surprise. She couldn't help but ask, You're from Wudang? Ning Changge smiled. It seems your father has mentioned the matter between us. Huang Rong was completely stunned. The handsome young man before her seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. She had heard many stories about Ning Changge, and the more she learned, the more she realized how formidable he was. Her dedication to martial arts was partly driven by a stubborn desire not to fall too far behind him. You're really my fiancé whom I've never met?" Huang Rong asked, her small mouth slightly open, looking adorably dazed. Ning Changge couldn't help but laugh. Before coming here, he had thought about how to handle the engagement with Huang Rong. Given his current cultivation and mindset, ordinary women didn't catch his eye. The woman who would stand by his side had to be someone who could share the journey of immortality with him, a Tao companion. The path of immortality was lonely, and Ning Changge wasn't a heartless person. He didn't mind having a Tao companion, but it wouldn't be easy for someone to meet his standards. To accompany him for eternity was the true requirement. At the very least, the spiritual light within Huang Rong's body made it possible. If she were to embark on the path of cultivation, she would undoubtedly surpass others. Because of this, Ning Changge didn't deny the engagement. He simply smiled. He now had an idea of how to handle this marriage arrangement. A blush spread across Huang Rong's cheeks as she turned away, then quickly turned back, trying to hide her nervousness and appear nonchalant. "I've heard from my father that you've become very powerful. You must be here on your master's orders. If you don't think I'm good enough, don't worry about it. You can tell my father directly." "On Peach Blossom Island, we're not narrow-minded people," Huang Rong said seriously, looking at Ning Changge. "I'll talk to your father when the time comes." Huang Rong fell silent, looking a little disappointed. She took a deep breath and said, "In that case, I'll take you to see my father." She added, "But there are 2 guests on the island right now, and my father doesn't seem to like them very much." Ning Changge's interest was piqued. His spirit god instantly enveloped the entire island, and his eyes narrowed slightly. At the center of Peach Blossom Island, a vast manor stood, complete with pavilions, artificial mountains, flowing water, and peach trees scattered throughout, creating an air of mystery. In the Falling Blossom Hall, 3 figures sat in the main hall. In the main seat was a man dressed in a scholar's robe, his face cold. Huang Yaoshi stared icily at the 2 uninvited guests. The 2 men seated below him were both elderly. One had a kind face but sharp eyes, while the other looked fierce but had a hint of clarity in his gaze. They were none other than the rewarding good and punishing evil envoys, Zhang San and Li Si. "Island Master Huang, we've been sent by the 2 island masters of Xianxia Island to invite you to the island for a bowl of laba congee. Have you made your decision?" Zhang San asked slowly. Li Si chimed in. "Island Master Huang, we're extending this invitation out of respect for you as one of the Song Dynasty's 5 greats. You should consider it carefully. You've had a few days to think it over." Huang Yaoshi's expression grew colder. The rewarding good and punishing evil envoys appeared every 16 years, inviting famous figures from the Jianghu to Xianxia Island to drink a bowl of laba congee. That wouldn't be a problem except that those who went rarely returned. It had been years since anyone had come back. Huang Yaoshi now had his wife and daughter with him, and his disciples were loyal. How could he agree to such a thing? "What if I refuse?" he asked. "If you refuse, well, we'll have to report to the island masters and they'll decide. They might come to invite you personally," Zhang San said with a cold smile, standing up. Huang Yaoshi's face stiffened. The 2 before him were already Heaven Man realm experts. While he wasn't necessarily weaker than them, they had mentioned that experts like them were common on Xianxia Island. And the 2 mysterious island masters, weren't they land immortals? That was why he hadn't acted rashly. Land immortals were not something he could contend with. If he agreed to go to Xianxia Island, it would mean being separated from his wife and daughter, with no guarantee of survival. He couldn't help but feel conflicted. Zhang San and Li Si, on the other hand, were feeling quite smug. In the Jianghu, their strength as newly ascended Heaven Man experts was usually enough. And when it wasn't, the mere mention of the island masters was enough to make most experts comply, following them back to Xianxia Island without resistance. What they didn't understand was why so many people resisted going to the island to drink laba congee, as if they were being sent to their deaths. "Island Master Huang, you should think it over carefully," Li Si added, bowing again. Huang Yaoshi's reputation as the Eastern heretic was well known, so they had refrained from using force, opting for polite persuasion instead. Huang Yaoshi snorted coldly, his eyes fixed on the 2 men as he weighed the consequences. At that moment, a clear, lively voice rang out from outside the hall. "Father, someone's here to see you." Then a calm voice followed. "Ning Changge of Wudeng, here to visit Senior Huang on my master's orders, fulfilling the 10-year promise." The tense atmosphere in the hall instantly eased. Huang Yaoshi was momentarily stunned, then his eyes lit up with joy. It was Ning Changge. In recent days, Ning Changge's name had been on everyone's lips, and Huang Yaoshi had been eager to meet the baby he had encountered 10 years ago. Now, that moment had finally arrived. He didn't care about Zhang San and Li Si anymore and walked out to greet his guest. Standing beside his daughter was a young Taoist in white, calm and smiling, with an extraordinary aura. Huang Yaoshi couldn't help but be impressed. 10 years have passed, and I never imagined you'd grow into such a figure. The power of time is truly awe-inspiring, he marveled. The events on Mount Zhongnan hadn't reached him yet, but he was well aware of Ning Changge's feats at Mount Imei and in front of Shaolin Temple. Ning Changge smiled. 10 years ago, I was just a baby. If not for my master and the 2 seniors who saved me, I would have been nothing more than a meal for wild beasts. Huang Yaoshi waved it off. It was merely a coincidence. I didn't do much. He was self-aware and had never intended to take credit. Ever since Ning Changge's fame had spread across the Jianghu, Huang Yaoshi had known that the marriage arrangement might not hold. For ordinary people, a master's command was absolute, but for someone like Ning Changge, it was up to him to decide. Huang Yaoshi had been waiting for Ning Changge to come, ready to accept whatever decision he made about the engagement. But looking at Ning Changge now, with his extraordinary aura, Huang Yaoshi couldn't help but hope that the engagement would continue. Who wouldn't want such a talented son-in-law? Ning Changge glanced at Zhang San and Li Si and said calmly, "It seems Senior Huang has guests today. Perhaps I've come at a bad time." Huang Yaoshi smiled bitterly. Zhang San and Li Si, on the other hand, shivered. That casual glance from Ning Changge had made them feel as though their very souls were being extinguished. They finally realized who this young Taoist was. "May I ask, are you the little immortal of Wudang?" Zhang San, who had been arrogant just moments ago, now spoke with extreme caution. He had no choice but to be careful. The young man before him was a peerless genius. He had slain the evil emperor on Mount Imei and the golden Buddha in front of Shaolin Temple. And the most terrifying part was that he hadn't even been present for those battles, yet his power had been undeniable. Now, with the real person standing before them, how could they dare act arrogantly? Ning Changge's voice was calm, without a hint of emotion. "I heard you two were inviting Senior Huang to Xianxia Island." Zhang San and Li Si's faces went pale. They now understood how Huang Yaoshi had felt earlier, but their situation was even worse. A land immortal-level combatant stood before them. How could they dare act as they had before? This? The two stammered, cold sweat dripping from their foreheads. They never would have imagined that Huang Yaoshi, who seemed like a lone wolf, had such a connection to the little immortal of Wudang. At that moment, there was a commotion outside the hall. Huang Yaoshi's disciples came running, led by Ling Feng, who was shouting, "Master, something big has happened in the Jianghu, something big." Huang Yaoshi's heart skipped a beat. He had been about to scold his disciple for being rude, but seeing the urgency in Ling Feng's expression, he held back and asked, "What happened to make you so anxious?" Ling Feng paused when he saw so many people in the hall, especially the white-robed young man who caught his attention. But when Huang Yaoshi urged him on, he quickly said, "We just received news. Wudang's little immortal has done something earth-shattering again." In an instant, all eyes turned to Ning Changge, Huang Yaoshi, Huang Rong, Zhang San, and Li Si. Ling Feng, oblivious to the reactions around him, continued, "Master, you sensed the fall of 2 land immortals a few days ago, right? I sent someone to investigate, and it turns out that the little immortal was ambushed by the evil Emperor Xiang Yushan and the living Buddha Jinlun on Mount Zhongnan. In the end, he killed both of them," he finished in one breath, his eyes still wide with shock. Lu Chengfeng, Feng Mofeng, and the others were equally stunned, but the ones most shocked were Huang Yaoshi and the others. Ling Feng's words were like a thunderclap in their minds. Huang Yaoshi turned to Ning Changge, his expression blank with disbelief. Huang Rong's eyes widened even further, making her already large eyes seem enormous. As for Zhang San and Li Si, their legs gave out and they collapsed to the ground. They had, of course, sensed the fall of the 2 land immortals a few days ago, but they never imagined that the culprit would be standing right in front of them. The thought that 2 land immortals had been slain by Ning Changge made their scalps tingle, and they looked at him as if they had seen a ghost. Ling Feng, seeing the shocked expressions on everyone's faces, wasn't surprised. But what puzzled him was why they were all staring at the white-robed young man. Soon, his confusion was cleared up. Zhang San and Li Si, trembling, stood up and begged Ning Changge for mercy. "Please, little immortal, forgive us. We didn't know who we were dealing with. If we had known about your connection to Island Master Huang, we wouldn't have dared to act so arrogantly." Their faces were pale, and their hearts pounded like drums. Ling Feng and the others were left dumbfounded, staring at the young man beside Huang Rong. Only one thought echoed in their minds: this young man is the little immortal. In an instant, the myth became reality. The legendary figure from the Jianghu had appeared right before them. Everyone gasped in unison. Ning Changge sighed inwardly. He hadn't expected the events on Mount Jiangnan to reach Peach Blossom Island in such a way. Looking at Zhang San and Li Si, he had no interest in wasting time with them. He simply said, "Leave." Zhang San and Li Si scrambled to their feet and fled, literally rolling out of the hall. With just a word, 2 Heavenman experts had been sent running. Such was Ning Changge's power. Ling Feng and the others were left in awe. Huang Yaoshi, seeing his troubles vanish in an instant, couldn't help but shake his head and smile bitterly. The gap between them was simply too vast. He couldn't help but ask, "Changge, what Ling Feng just said?" He still found it hard to believe. It was too fantastical. Ning Changge smiled and nodded. "I was just at Mount Jiangnan visiting Master Chongyang." That was all the confirmation they needed. Everyone was left reeling, as if Ning Changge had casually mentioned taking a stroll up Mount Jiangnan, and in passing, killing 2 land immortals. Huang Yaoshi shook his head and smiled bitterly. Huang Rong's eyes were filled with admiration. She had grown up hearing stories about Ning Changge, but standing next to him now, the feeling was completely different. "Ling Feng, why are you all still standing around? Go make arrangements." Huang Yaoshi barked, snapping his disciples out of their daze. They quickly left to prepare a banquet. Huang Yaoshi then led Ning Changge to another pavilion, where Feng Heng soon arrived to greet him. Now, it was just Ning Changge and Huang Yaoshi's family of 3. After some pleasantries, Ning Changge presented Huang Yaoshi with the Jiazi pills and other gifts, which naturally caused another round of astonishment. Huang Yaoshi's expression grew serious as he finally asked, "Changge, I'd like to know, what are your thoughts on your engagement to Ronger?" As soon as he said this, both Feng Heng and Huang Rong tensed up, their hands clenching into fists. It was understandable why they felt this way. For ordinary people, being the daughter of one of the 5 greats of the Song dynasty, the Eastern heretic Huang Yaoshi, and possessing both extraordinary beauty and talent, Huang Rong would be considered a perfect match for anyone. Feng Heng would only wonder if the other party was worthy of her daughter. But the young man before them was different. He was the little immortal of Wudang. At only 10 years old, he had already slain 2 land immortals. He was being hailed as the most monstrous genius in the 9 provinces, and for someone like him, it seemed that Huang Rong might be the one who was reaching too high. However, they were at peace with the situation. If Ning Changge agreed to the marriage, it would be a cause for celebration. If not, it would simply be a matter of fate, and they could part ways amicably. They had no excessive expectations of Ning Changge. Besides, Ning Changge had just helped Huang Yaoshi avoid a major crisis. Without him, the invitation from Xia Qi Island alone would have been enough to cause Huang Yaoshi great trouble. At this moment, Huang Yaoshi looked at Ning Changge with some guilt. He said solemnly, "Changge, I bring this matter up not to pressure you. It's true that I made a marriage pact with Zhang Zhenren 10 years ago, but how things proceed should be entirely up to you. Don't feel obligated, just tell us your true thoughts." Ning Changge nodded slowly. He could clearly sense the emotions of Huang Yaoshi, Feng Heng, and Huang Rong. To be honest, when he had first transmigrated to this world and learned that he was betrothed to the famous heroine Huang Rong, he had been quite excited. But after 10 years of cultivation, his mindset had matured greatly. His considerations for a Dao companion were now much more profound. Ordinary heroines of the Jianghu were no longer within his scope of interest. However, Huang Rong did possess the potential for cultivation. If she was willing to accompany him on the path to immortality, that would be wonderful. Feelings could be nurtured over time. To be fair, she was an excellent candidate for a Dao companion. Ning Changge wasn't a saint who abstained from worldly desires. He simply had a firm heart for the Tao. With this in mind, he spoke earnestly. "Senior Huang, I've given this matter some thought. The engagement between Ronger and me was arranged by you and my master. As the saying goes, parents' orders and the matchmaker's words, and I will naturally take that into consideration. However, both Ronger and I are only 10 years old, and we don't know each other well yet. So I believe this matter can be postponed for now." He paused, then continued frankly. "To be honest, the path I walk is the immortal Tao, and my goal is to pursue the Tao and seek immortality. If Wronger can share this ambition with me, I would be more than happy to have her as my companion. The path to immortality is a lonely one, and having a Tao companion would make it much better. But this also depends on Wronger's wishes. Only if we share the same path can we be together. Otherwise, being together would only bring pain. If Wronger is willing, Senior Huang can bring her to Wudang for my master's centenary celebration. She can cultivate with me at Wudang, and even if we don't become Tao companions, I will treat her as a junior sister. His voice was gentle and calm, his reasoning sound. Huang Yaoshi and Feng Heng couldn't help but nod in agreement. Huang Rong, meanwhile, blushed and lowered her head shyly. Ning Changge's meaning was clear. He had laid out his concerns and plans in a way that was thoughtful and considerate, leaving no room for misunderstanding. This was the conclusion he had come to after meeting Huang Rong. Since she possessed a spiritual constitution, it was a bond that couldn't easily be severed. If she could walk the path of cultivation with him and seek immortality, it would be ideal. Huang Yaoshi's eyes were filled with admiration. Changge, your considerations are indeed thorough. For Zhang Zhenren's centenary celebration, I will certainly bring Wronger and the disciples of Peach Blossom Island to Wudang. With Ning Changge's words, how could he not be satisfied? Not only had Ning Changge not looked down on Peach Blossom Island, but he had also made it clear that even if they didn't become Tao companions, he would still treat Huang Rong as a junior sister. Such a person only made Huang Yaoshi more and more pleased. If Ning Changge could become his son-in-law, he would be overjoyed. He couldn't help but feel that his chance encounter with the infant Ning Changge 10 years ago had been a stroke of great fortune. Feng Heng also smiled, finally feeling at ease. Ning Changge wasn't an overbearing person, and her daughter hadn't been humiliated, so she was relieved. However, having heard Ning Changge repeatedly mention the immortal Tao and recalling the rumors in the Jianghu, Feng Heng couldn't help but ask curiously, "Changge, you mentioned that you practice the immortal Tao. What exactly is this immortal Tao?" As Ning Changge's feats became more and more terrifying, the question that Yao Yue had asked on Tianzhu Peak had resurfaced. Countless people were speculating, what kind of path was this immortal Tao? Hearing this, both Huang Yaoshi and Huang Rong looked at Ning Changge with curiosity, especially Huang Rong. When she had heard Ning Changge's ambition to pursue the Tao and seek immortality, she had felt a subconscious yearning. Ning Changge smiled slightly. He had never hidden the fact that he practiced the immortal Tao. Otherwise, he wouldn't have answered Yao Yue's question back on Wudang. He began to explain, "The immortal Tao is a cultivation system that I created. The foundation of the immortal Tao is something called spiritual energy. Spiritual energy exists between heaven and earth. In martial arts, when one reaches the heaven man realm, they can manipulate the forces of heaven and earth. In reality, the essence of these forces is the manipulation of spiritual energy, which creates spiritual pressure, or what you call the power of heaven and earth. In the heaven man realm, one can draw upon the forces of heaven and earth, gaining their support and wielding great power. In the land immortal realm, one can resonate with spiritual energy to a certain extent, drawing even more power from heaven and earth. But the immortal Tao is different. From the very beginning, it involves refining the power of heaven and earth into oneself. Not only does this extend one's lifespan, offering the possibility of immortality, but the power it grants is limitless. As one's cultivation advances, the stronger their spiritual energy becomes, and the more they can manipulate the spiritual energy of the world. Currently, I am in the first stage of the immortal Tao, the Qi refining stage, which involves refining spiritual energy. Even at this stage, I already have a lifespan of 600 years. Once I ascend to the foundation establishment stage, my lifespan will extend to 2,000 years. This was the first time Ning Changge had explained the immortal Tao in such detail to anyone outside of Zhang Sanfeng and the Wudang Seven Heroes. Part of the reason was the engagement with Huang Rong, but it was also because he was about to ascend to the foundation establishment stage. He planned to gradually introduce the concept of the immortal Tao to more people. One day, when he reached the Golden Core stage, he might even establish a sect to spread the teachings of the immortal Tao. This was an insight he had gained during his cultivation. After the Golden Core stage, progress would likely become more difficult, and he might encounter unknown obstacles. Gathering the collective wisdom of the people to fuel his immortal Tao was a path Ning Changge found feasible. Only by doing so could he more quickly ascend to the nascent soul stage and beyond, eventually becoming a true immortal. Because of this, he would gradually begin to introduce the immortal Tao to the 9 provinces. As for those who coveted his power, once he reached the foundation establishment stage and sat atop Wudang's Tianzhu Peak, he might not be invincible, but at the very least, no one would be able to harm him. As he finished speaking, the room fell into silence. Huang Yiashi and Feng Heng were dumbfounded, their minds spinning. Huang Rong, too, was wide-eyed, her small hands unconsciously loosening their grip on her white dress. The immortal Tao. It wasn't just a path to the land immortal realm. It was entirely different from the Tao of Taiji, the true dragon Tao, or the Buddhist Tao. It was an entirely new cultivation system, separate from martial arts. What a shocking revelation. Huang Yiashi, being a heaven man expert, understood the nature of heaven and earth, so he knew that Ning Changge wasn't lying. So, the essence of the forces of heaven and earth is spiritual energy. The immortal Tao manipulates spiritual energy from the very beginning. How terrifying, and its lifespan far exceeds that of martial arts. To create such a system, Chang, you truly are a genius beyond compare. Huang Yiashi couldn't help but praise him. It was a genuine compliment, spoken from the heart. His eccentric personality had earned him the title of the Eastern Heretic, so for him to speak so highly of someone was a testament to how deeply impressed he was. Only now did he understand why Ning Changge was so powerful. It was because he wasn't practicing martial arts at all. No wonder Ning Changge had said his goal was to pursue the Tao and seek immortality. With a lifespan of thousands of years, or even more, it was clear that his ambitions lay far beyond the land immortal realm. Reflecting on Ning Changge's earlier words about his engagement with Huang Rong, Huang Yiashi gained a new perspective. If his daughter had a short lifespan, it was true that she and Ning Changge wouldn't be a good match. Huang Yiashi spoke earnestly. Changge, we trust you, and we won't spread this information. As for whether Ronger becomes your Tao companion, we'll leave that to fate and follow your wishes. At this point, he was completely convinced that Ning Changge's character wouldn't allow his daughter to be mistreated. Huang Rong's eyes sparkled with admiration and determination. Only now did she fully understand the kind of extraordinary person her fiancé was. If she wanted to keep up with him, she would have to work incredibly hard. Ning Changge simply smiled and nodded. Ronger has the potential for the immortal Tao. In the future, I will guide her on this path. As for how far she goes, that will depend on her own efforts. He looked at Huang Rong, who blushed but met his gaze with determination. Brother Ning, I will work hard. Huang Rong's heart was filled with admiration for Ning Changge, along with a feeling she couldn't quite describe. From the moment they had met, she had felt something special. Huang Yiashi and Feng Heng exchanged smiles. A weight had been lifted from their hearts. After chatting for a while longer, Kaling Feng and the others informed them that the banquet was ready. After the meal, everyone became more familiar with each other. They quickly learned that Ning Changge had a calm and contemplative nature, enjoying discussions about the Tao. Huang Yiashi smiled and said, Changge, why not stay on Peach Blossom Island for a few days? Our collection of Taoist texts may not be as extensive as the Quanzhen sects, but we do have some rare books, especially on Kaimendunjia and other esoteric arts. I've already had my disciples copy them, and I'll send them to Wudang. This had been prepared in advance. Ning Changge's habit of spending years studying in Wudang's library pavilion was no secret. Most of the Jianghu knew about it. Ning Changge smiled and agreed. His visit to Peach Blossom Island had gone smoothly, and he had fulfilled the 2 promises made 10 years ago. Now, he felt an unprecedented sense of clarity and peace. He knew that in just a few more days, once the spiritual energy had fully nourished his spiritual tree, he would naturally ascend to the foundation establishment stage. It was a natural progression. He decided to stay on Peach Blossom Island until after his breakthrough. Moreover, he was intrigued by the Taoist texts on Kaimendunjia that Huang Yiashi had mentioned. They might provide new insights into his understanding of formations. And so, Ning Changge decided to stay on Peach Blossom Island for a short while. Peach Blossom Island was a place of great beauty. Ning Changge sat in a pavilion within the Peach Blossom Forest, gazing at the blooming trees. Occasionally, he would lower his head to read a Taoist text, feeling a deep sense of peace. It was no different from the tranquility he experienced in Wudang's library pavilion. In the Peach Blossom Valley, there is a Peach Blossom Hermitage. In the Peach Blossom Hermitage, there lives a Peach Blossom Immortal. The Peach Blossom Immortal plants peach trees and uses the branches to pay for his wine. He recited softly. Then he glanced at Huang Rong, who was practicing her swordsmanship not far away. He felt a strange sense of contentment. Over the past few days, his impression of Huang Rong had improved. She was indeed a clever and lively girl. Though still young, she had a clear understanding of her goals. She wanted to become his Dao companion, so she had begun to work hard. In the peach blossom forest, Ning Changge studied the Dao like an immortal contemplating the mysteries of the universe, while Huang Rong practiced her swordsmanship, like a celestial maiden descending to the mortal world. Together, they seemed like a painting. Ning Changge felt a strange sense of connection as he continued reading. The text was titled Kaimen Dunjia. Kaimen Dunjia refers to the three elements of Qi, Men, and Jia. Qi refers to the three celestial stems, Yi, Bing, and Ding. Men refers to the 8 gates, rest, life, injury, blockage, view, death, fear, and open. Jia refers to the 6 Jia, Jiazi, Jiaxu, Jiashan, Jiawu, Jiachan, and Jiayan. Kaimen Dunjia is a system that uses the 6 Yi, 3 Qi, 8 gates, and 9 stars to calculate the relationships between things. Ning Changge felt a sense of understanding. This not only involves the Tao of formations, but also divination and calculation, which is somewhat related to the lesser causality technique I've developed. He had discussed the Tao with Huang Yaoshi. Huang Yaoshi was indeed a master of Kaimen Dunjia. Though his combat power was insignificant in Ning Changge's eyes, his insights into the esoteric arts had provided Ning Changge with new inspiration, sparking his interest. After several days of study, Ning Changge's mind was filled with flashes of insight. Today, those insights were coming together, forming a cohesive whole. Kaimen Dunjia encompasses a vast array of knowledge. Setting aside the Tao of formations for now, I've already mastered the lesser causality technique, which allows me to deduce causality and act accordingly. If I combine it with Kaimen Dunjia, it might be possible. Ning Changge's mind raced with insights. He saw faint lines of causality floating before him, though they were still blurry. Due to his limited cultivation, he could only see the parts related to himself, and even then, only those with strong ties to him. But that wasn't his goal. Spiritual energy surged within him as he followed the lines of causality, calculating and deducing. A series of revelations filled his mind. He couldn't help but glance at Huang Rong, who quickly turned away like a startled deer. In the past, he could only sense whether he had a connection with someone, but now, he could deduce the events that would follow from that connection. For example, in the past, he had only known that he would have some interaction with Jin Ling, but he hadn't known what form that interaction would take. If it were now, he would be able to deduce the scene of Jin Ling kneeling before the library pavilion. Ning Changge felt a surge of joy. The Tao of divination is vast and profound. I've only scratched the surface. I'll call this technique the lesser divination technique. System notification. After studying Kaimen Dunjia and combining it with the lesser causality technique, you have gained a clearer understanding of the lines of causality. You can now use this to deduce events and avoid confusion. You have created the lesser divination technique. The lesser divination technique was a step toward Ning Changge's ultimate goal. One day, he would become an eternal existence, capable of calculating all things, from the heavens above to the earth below. But for now, the greatest significance of this technique was that it would allow him to continuously adjust his path on the journey to immortality. The immortal Tao had no predecessors, and every step was like crossing a river by feeling for stones. Even with Ning Changge's extraordinary comprehension, he needed to proceed carefully to avoid going astray. With this divination technique, he would be able to avoid many detours. He formed a hand seal, feeling a sense of understanding. His spirit god looked inward, and he saw that the 5-element spiritual tree within the vortex of spiritual liquid in his danshan had begun to transform. A surge of joy rose within him. Ascending to the foundation establishment stage, it seems today is the day. The 3 major hurdles of foundation establishment: spiritual energy, spiritual sense, and state of mind. For Ning Changge, the first 2 were never obstacles. Only his state of mind had a slight lack of clarity. However, his journey to the Quanjin sect and Peach Blossom Island, fulfilling the 10-year promises, had cleared away any lingering doubts. By Ning Changge's own calculations, his ascension to the foundation establishment stage was only a matter of days. Today, after creating the lesser divination technique through his study of Kaimen Dunjia, inspiration struck, and he took the final step. His eyes were filled with joy. His spirit god turned inward, observing his danshan. The vortex of spiritual liquid was surging more violently than ever, spinning at an increasingly rapid pace. Within the vortex, 5 spiritual swords floated up and down, their sword light shimmering. They were being nourished by the spiritual liquid, and with time, they would further evolve, eventually becoming treasure artifacts or even Tao artifacts. But the most extraordinary feature wasn't the 5 spiritual swords. It was what they surrounded and protected. A spiritual tree, glowing with the light of the 5 elements, swayed gently. Compared to the tiny sapling it had once been, the 5 elements spiritual tree was now nearly a proper tree. Its trunk was growing taller, its branches and leaves taking shape, and each leaf, shimmering in 5 colors, glowed brilliantly under the nourishment of the spiritual liquid. A profound Taoist aura emanated from it. Foundation establishment, building the foundation of the Tao. For Ning Changge, the 5-element spiritual tree was the foundation he had created for himself. One day, when the tree fully matured, it would bear a golden core. This was the path of the spiritual tree nurturing the golden core. He already had a clear vision of his future path to the golden core. The eternal evergreen technique was second nature to him by now. He circulated it repeatedly, using the spiritual liquid to nourish the tree, pushing it toward its final transformation. Insights flooded his mind, and the Taoist texts he had studied over the years became fuel, enriching his foundation and seemingly carving themselves into the 5-element spiritual tree. He recalled the dream he had of the primordial divine tree. Each leaf represented a law and each fruit embodied a Tao. His heart thundered as if struck by lightning. That's it. This is the path I should walk. The 5-element spiritual tree is only the beginning. One day, I will comprehend all the great Taos and merge them into the tree, transforming it into the divine tree of the great Tao. The thought filled him with excitement. It was as if the 5-element spiritual tree sensed his intentions. The final segment of its trunk grew, and the 5 elements light suddenly flared brilliantly. Buzz! A resonant hum emanated from Ning Changge's body. Within him, a profound transformation was taking place. As the trunk of the 5-element spiritual tree completed itself, it immediately began to devour spiritual liquid at an astonishing rate. What had once been small sips turned into massive gulps. In just a dozen breaths, the entire vortex of spiritual liquid was consumed. The tree's height surged. From its original 3 feet, it tripled in size, reaching a full 10 feet. Ning Changge quietly observed the changes within him. These transformations were a natural result of his breakthrough, and he focused on comprehending their intricacies. Once the tree stopped growing, the spiritual liquid it had absorbed was expelled once more, reforming into a vortex that enveloped the tree. However, the expelled liquid was now visibly darker, a deep blue with hints of gold. This was the hallmark of the foundation establishment stage. Mana. The so-called boundless power of mana, foundation establishment was the stage where one cultivated mana. From this point onward, with the creation of mana, the immortal Tao truly began. As the tree and mana completed their transformations, the changes continued. In his mind, his spirit god emerged, bathed in mana. The 5 elements light enveloped it, and the once translucent spirit god became more solid, its strength increasing severalfold. His spiritual sense, when released, now covered an astonishing range. Even his physical body underwent a transformation. Having practiced the celestial phenomena body refinement technique, Ning Changge's physical body was already far superior to that of ordinary people. Now it advanced even further, surpassing even the Golden Spirit. It was worth noting that the Golden Spirit was a spiritual monkey renowned for its physical prowess. The foundation establishment stage brought a threefold transformation: mana, spiritual sense, and physical body. As Ning Changge's body underwent its transformation, the outside world also reacted to his breakthrough. At the moment of his breakthrough, a resonant hum echoed from his body. Huang Rong, who had been practicing her swordsmanship, froze. Her innate sensitivity to spiritual energy made her instinctively turn around, and what she saw left her stunned. Beneath a peach tree, the young Taoist sat cross-legged, his features serene and otherworldly. Waves of profound energy radiated from him, creating a scene that looked like a painting. Huang Rong stared in awe. Her eyes widened as the phenomenon intensified. Waves of spiritual energy began to overflow from Ning Changge's body, shimmering with the light of the 5 elements. The heavens seemed to respond. Clouds churned and unseen spiritual energy poured into Ning Changge, transforming into fresh mana. On Peach Blossom Island, strange phenomena began to manifest. Huang Rong covered her mouth, afraid to make a sound and disturb Ning Changge. "Brother Ning, is he comprehending the Tao?" she whispered, her eyes filled with awe and admiration. The scene before her was magical, unlike anything she had ever seen. Five-colored light continuously emanated from Ning Changge's body, merging with the peach tree beneath which he sat. In an instant, the peach tree underwent a miraculous transformation. Its branches blossomed with peach flowers, which quickly matured, fell, regrew, and fell again, repeating the cycle at an accelerated pace. In the blink of an eye, the ground was covered with a carpet of peach petals, creating a breathtaking sight. Yet not a single petal landed on Ning Changge. Huang Rong's heart raced as she watched. It was as if she were witnessing the cycle of life and death play out on the peach tree, a sight both wondrous and profound. Finally, the peach blossoms reached a state of perfection and stopped falling. Then, plump, radiant peaches began to grow, each glowing faintly with the light of the five elements. Huang Rong couldn't help but swallow, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. It wasn't her fault. In just a short moment, Ning Changge's breakthrough had transformed the peach tree into a five-element spirit peach tree. To create a spiritual tree through sheer force of will, what an incredible feat. It was a testament to the power of Ning Changge's five elements Tao foundation. Meanwhile, in the sky above, clouds churned and waves of spiritual energy swept across the island. The peach trees swayed, and the sea outside the island roared with towering waves. Yet, strangely, none of this energy entered Peach Blossom Island. The phenomena naturally drew the attention of everyone on the island. Huang Yaoshi, who had been strolling along the shore with Feng Heng, was startled. Seeing the 100-foot waves, he instinctively pulled Feng Heng back. But the waves, defying logic, receded on their own. The couple exchanged a glance, then turned toward the peach blossom forest. "Could it be Changge?" Huang Yaoshi murmured, his eyes filled with shock. The two hurried toward the forest, followed by the other residents of Peach Blossom Island. Meanwhile, 100 miles away from the island, two figures walking on the waves came to an abrupt halt, their expressions grave. The two elderly men, one in a yellow robe and the other in a green robe, were none other than the island masters of Xianxia Island. Having heard Zhang San and Li Si's account of the events on Peach Blossom Island, they had decided to personally invite Ning Changge to Xianxia Island to study the Tai Chuan scripture. But they hadn't expected to encounter such a massive surge of spiritual energy just 100 miles from the island. The green-robed elder spoke gravely. "Brother Long, could it be that the little immortal has ascended to the land immortal realm?" Their speculation was understandable. The spiritual energy fluctuations were so intense that they could feel them even from 100 miles away. They couldn't imagine what it would be like to stand on Peach Blossom Island itself. Before the Dragon Island Master could respond, the Wood Island Master shook his head, dismissing his own guess. "No, this isn't the phenomenon of a land immortal's ascension. While the fluctuations are intense, they're not the same as the signs of a land immortal breakthrough." The Dragon Island Master nodded in agreement. "Brother Mew, it seems the little immortal is truly extraordinary. If this isn't a land immortal breakthrough, then he must have achieved something remarkable. Perhaps he has comprehended something incredible. No wonder he's known as a monstrous genius, capable of slaying land immortals while still in the Heaven-Man realm." The two stared into the distance, their hearts filled with awe. Even among land immortals, there were differences in strength. Ning Changge, who hadn't even reached the land immortal realm, already possessed top-tier combat power, making him a figure to be reckoned with. This time, we must invite the little immortal to Xianxia Island. With his comprehension, he could undoubtedly unravel the mysteries of the stone wall. The two nodded resolutely. Ever since they had discovered the stone wall, it had become their obsession. It was why they periodically invited geniuses from the Jianghu to Xianxia Island to study it. "What if he refuses?" the Wood Island Master asked. The question hung in the air, and the two fell silent. But they continued toward Peach Blossom Island. Back on Peach Blossom Island, Huang Yaoshi and the others arrived at the Peach Blossom Forest. Huang Rong quickly gestured for them to remain silent. Peering ahead, they couldn't help but gasp. In the distance, Ning Changge sat beneath the spirit peach tree, his aura ethereal, as if he were a celestial being. Around him, 3 flames, one blue, one purple, and one white, swirled rapidly. They had heard of these flames before. On Mount Jiangnan, these very flames had incinerated the living Buddha of the secret sect. Now the flames were spinning faster and faster, as if they were about to merge. They hadn't witnessed the earlier transformation of the spirit peach tree, but seeing the flames now, they assumed Ning Changge was creating another divine technique. causing this incredible phenomenon. If the three flames, which could already incinerate a living Buddha, were to merge, how much more powerful would they become? Huang Yaoshi didn't dare to imagine. His heart pounded uncontrollably. Even as a Heaven Man expert, he couldn't help but tremble before the flames. The others were equally awestruck, their breaths held, their movements frozen. Ning Changge, of course, was aware of their presence, but he didn't mind. His foundation establishment breakthrough was already complete. Now, he was using the momentum of his success to fully comprehend the Samadhi true fire. The three flames were already complete. All that remained was the final step. Primordial spirit, essence, and vital energy, these are the three components of the Samadhi. To merge them, mana must serve as the catalyst. With his foundation establishment breakthrough, his spiritual energy had transformed into mana. Using the lesser divination technique, he quickly deduced the correct method. Mana surged forth, serving as fuel. The three flames, spinning rapidly, suddenly collided and began to merge. Under the astonished gazes of Huang Yaoshi, Huang Rong, and the others, a black flame emerged from the fusion of the three. The moment the black flame appeared, it radiated an aura that sent shivers down their spines, as if merely looking at it for a moment longer would cause them to be consumed. System notification. Using mana as a catalyst, you have fused the true fire of the primordial spirit, the true fire of essence, and the true fire of vital energy, creating the minor divine ability Samadhi true fire. Ning Changge opened his eyes, a look of joy on his face. The Samadhi true fire was finally complete. Combining the traits of the three flames, the Samadhi true fire could burn souls, bodies, and vital energy alike. Its power had increased severalfold. This was no ordinary immortal Tao technique. It was a divine ability. No wonder it required mana as a catalyst. Such a divine ability could only be wielded by someone at the foundation establishment stage. At the chi refining stage, its power wouldn't have been fully realized. Ning Changge reflected. The difference between spiritual energy and mana was significant. With the creation of the Samadhi true fire, Ning Changge exited his state of enlightenment. He took a moment to review the gains from his breakthrough. First and foremost, he had successfully ascended to the foundation establishment stage. His mana, spirit god, and physical body had all undergone significant transformations, greatly enhancing his strength. Observing the 10-foot-tall, 5-element spiritual tree in his danshan, Ning Changge smiled. This was the Tao foundation he had built for himself, and he was very pleased. The 5 elements Tao was vast and interconnected with other Taos. It would serve as a springboard for further exploration, a true foundation of the Tao. Ning Changge had a clear vision of his path forward. However, as he observed the spiritual light on the 5 elements spiritual tree, he felt a twinge of regret. I had hoped that reaching the foundation establishment stage would allow me to fully develop the Tao foundation divine ability, but it seems I'll need more time and deeper cultivation. He felt both regret and anticipation. If it was difficult to nurture, it meant the divine ability would be incredibly powerful. Perhaps it will surpass even the Samadhi true fire. Glancing at the black flame hovering before him, Ning Changge's lips curved into a smile. He then turned his attention to the spirit peach tree before him, his eyes filled with wonder. A quick calculation revealed the origin of the tree's transformation. It had absorbed some of the 5 elements light and mana released during his breakthrough, resulting in its miraculous evolution. This tree should be called the 5 elements spirit peach tree. Consuming its fruit regularly will not only aid my cultivation, but also accelerate the growth of the 5 elements spiritual tree. How marvelous, a companion spiritual artifact of sorts. Ning Changge couldn't help but praise it. He quickly formulated a plan. With a wave of his hand, he plucked a few of the most potent spirit peaches and branches. He didn't plan to move the entire tree back to Wudang. Firstly, the tree had been born here, tied to this place by fate. Forcibly relocating it might sever its vitality, which wasn't necessary. Leaving it on Peach Blossom Island might yield unexpected benefits in the future. Secondly, the tree was still young, and its spiritual essence wasn't particularly dense. It wasn't yet of great use to him. By taking its branches and fruit back to Wudang's spiritual herb garden, he could cultivate successive generations of spirit peaches with even greater spiritual energy. Those would truly become his tools for advancing the Tao. With this in mind, Ning Changge stored the peaches and branches in his storage ring. After completing this task, he turned to the stunned Huang Yaoshi and the others. Smiling faintly, he said apologetically, I had a moment of insight earlier and may have disturbed you. Please forgive me. The group could only smile bitterly. If this was just a moment of insight, then what were their usual breakthroughs? Complete ignorance, Huang Yaoshi sighed wryly. Today I've come to realize how ordinary I truly am. He was a proud man, but before Ning Changge, he willingly admitted defeat. The others nodded in agreement. A single breakthrough had caused such an astonishing phenomenon. In front of Ning Changge, they all felt like mere mortals. Even though they didn't know the full extent of his progress, the phenomena alone spoke volumes. Ning Changge smiled but was about to speak when his expression shifted. He looked into the distance. Moments later, two voices rang out in unison. The island masters of Xianxia Island, Dragon and Wood, have come to invite the little immortal. The voices, though distant, rang clearly in everyone's ears, showcasing the profound cultivation of the visitors. However, upon hearing the words, Huang Yaoshi's expression changed drastically. Dragon and Wood Island masters. These were the two masters of Xianxia Island, unquestionably land immortal-level experts. Though their reputation in the Jianghu wasn't particularly widespread, Huang Yaoshi knew them well. Xianxia Island was known for periodically sending emissaries to invite renowned Jianghu experts to the island. Just a few days ago, he himself had been invited. That day, Zhang San and Li Si had come to extend the invitation. If not for Ning Changge's overwhelming presence scaring them off, Huang Yaoshi might not have been able to handle the situation so easily. And now, the two land immortals had personally come to extend an invitation. This was enough to send waves of shock through Huang Yaoshi's heart. He instinctively glanced at Ning Changge, his eyes filled with concern. The others were equally uneasy. Living on Peach Blossom Island, they were somewhat familiar with the reputation of Xianxia Island. Only Ning Changge remained unfazed. He simply looked toward the sky with a calm expression. Two figures approached side by side. Though they were still over the sea in the blink of an eye, they stood before the group. One wore a green robe, the other a yellow robe, both appearing as elderly men. Dragon and Wood of Xianxia Island greet the little immortal. We apologize for the intrusion and hope for your understanding, they said in unison. The Dragon and Wood Island masters discreetly observed the young Taoist before them, their hearts trembling. The youth seemed to be favored by the heavens themselves. Still surrounded by the lingering aura of his recent breakthrough, Ning Changge exuded an ethereal presence, as if he were one with the heavens and earth. Their respect deepened. The rumors were true. Though Ning Changge had not yet reached the land immortal realm, he was already on par with them. Showing respect to a peer of equal standing was only natural. Ning Changge calmly studied the two before him. He could already guess their purpose. Despite this being a world of martial arts, many events followed familiar patterns. Their visit was undoubtedly to invite him to Xianxia Island to study the Tai Chuan scripture engraved on the stone wall. To be honest, Ning Changge was somewhat intrigued by the Tai Chuan scripture. In this wondrous world of martial arts, the scripture might have been left behind by a peerless expert from thousands of years ago. After all, it had produced two land immortals. What brings the two of you here? Ning Changge asked indifferently. The Dragon and Wood Island masters exchanged glances before speaking solemnly. We have come to invite the little immortal to Xianxia Island for a discussion. Ning Changge replied without hesitation, I'm not going. His decisive refusal left everyone stunned. Huang Yaoshi and the others were momentarily dumbfounded. Such a resolute rejection, especially directed at two land immortals, was shocking. Yet amidst their shock, Huang Yaoshi felt a hint of satisfaction. This was the demeanor of a peerless expert, free-spirited and unyielding, even to land immortals. He recalled the earlier invitation from Zhang San and Li Si. If he had possessed such strength, he could have driven them off with a wave of his hand, sparing himself the indignity of their prolonged presence. The Dragon and Wood Island masters were taken aback. They hadn't expected Ning Changge to refuse so swiftly and decisively. A flicker of irritation crossed their faces. After all, they had shown him considerable respect, and such a curt dismissal was undoubtedly a slight. However, they restrained themselves. The Dragon Island master remained silent, while the Wood Island master stepped forward and said, Little immortal, there's no need to refuse so quickly. Our invitation is made with sincerity, and perhaps the rumors about Xianxia Island have given you a misunderstanding. He paused before continuing. To be honest, the Jianghu rumors about those we invite to Xianxia Island are untrue. None of them were imprisoned or killed. They remain on the island entirely of their own volition. His words were startling. Huang Yaoshi and the others were taken aback. Huang Yaoshi couldn't help but question, if that's the case, why would these people willingly stay on the island for decades without leaving? Ning Changge's presence gave him the confidence to question even land immortals. Of course, the Wood Island Master's claim was indeed implausible, and the group's skepticism was evident. Seeing that Ning Changge remained unmoved, the Wood Island Master revealed their trump card. The reason, he said slowly, is that Xianxia Island has a stone wall engraved with a peerless martial art. Those invited to the island are allowed to study this martial art, which offers the chance to ascend to the land immortal realm. Given such an opportunity, why would they willingly leave? We too were fortunate enough to encounter this opportunity on Xianxia Island in our youth. Through years of diligent cultivation, we eventually reached the land immortal realm. However, our aptitude is insufficient to fully comprehend the martial art. Thus, we decided to gather the wisdom of heroes from across the Jianghu. This is why we periodically invite experts to Xianxia Island. When we sent Zhang San and Li Si to Peach Blossom Island, it was because we recognized Island Master Huang's exceptional talent. There was no malicious intent. His explanation finally revealed the truth, leaving Huang Yaoshi and the others in shock. They hadn't expected the invitations to Xianxia Island to be for such a reason. Huang Yaoshi couldn't help but feel a twinge of regret. The chance to ascend to the land immortal realm, what a powerful martial art it must be. But as he glanced at his wife and daughter, he slowly shook his head. Even if he had known the truth, he wouldn't have chosen to go. Leaving his loved ones for decades or even centuries in pursuit of martial arts was something he couldn't do. It was clear that the island imposed restrictions. Otherwise, why had no news ever come from those who went there? Ning Changge listened quietly, his expression unchanged. Their explanation aligned with what he already knew. It seemed that Xianxia Island in this world hadn't deviated much from its usual pattern. The Wood Island Master, observing Ning Changge's unchanging expression, decided to lay all his cards on the table. After Zhang San and Li Si returned, we learned of the little immortal's presence on Peach Blossom Island. That's why we've come to invite you personally. Your comprehension is unparalleled in the 9 provinces. If you were to dedicate time to studying the martial art, you would undoubtedly master it. We ask for nothing more than a copy of the martial art, should you succeed in comprehending it. The Dragon and Wood Island Masters looked at Ning Changge expectantly. At this point, everyone understood why the 2 land immortals were being so deferential. They were banking on Ning Changge's extraordinary comprehension. The group couldn't help but marvel at the disparity between people. To possess such monstrous talent that even land immortals would humble themselves, it was truly extraordinary. All eyes turned to Ning Changge, eager to hear his response. He spoke calmly, "If I refuse, will you attempt to take me by force?" The Dragon Island Master smiled bitterly. "Little immortal, you misunderstand. The events on Mount Zhongnan are well known. We are here with sincere intentions and have no desire to force you. Please reconsider." His words were partly true. The truth was that Ning Changge was too powerful, and they weren't confident in their ability to subdue him. Otherwise, their approach might have been different. After all, not every Jianghu expert invited to Xianxia Island had gone willingly. Many had only chosen to stay after witnessing the opportunity presented by the stone wall. The Dragon Island Master gritted his teeth and said, "If the little immortal agrees to visit, we will owe you a favor." Huang Yaoshi and the others were stunned. A favor from 2 land immortals. Such a favor was invaluable. It was like having 2 protective talismans. If someone in the Jianghu possessed the favor of land immortals, most Heavenman experts wouldn't dare to touch them. Ning Changge nodded lightly. "A favor could be useful for Wudang." "Very well. Since you've invited me, I'll consider it. But I have one condition. I want to see the paths you've comprehended from the stone wall. If they interest me, I'll accompany you." Ning Changge had no intention of wasting time. No matter how powerful the Tai Chuan scripture was, if it was merely a martial art, it wouldn't be of much use to him. If that were the case, he would have long since started collecting martial arts manuals from across the world. In truth, he gained far more inspiration from Taoist texts. For example, the 9 Yin manual contained many profound techniques, but they were of little value to him. Instead, the brief general principles, which weren't even part of the martial art, had been immensely beneficial. His words left everyone stunned. The Dragon and Wood Island Masters narrowed their eyes. Ning Changge's meaning was clear. If their paths earned his approval, he would go with them. This little immortal is truly arrogant, they thought, their hearts burning with anger. They had shown him great respect, even humbling themselves, and had offered generous terms to invite him. Yet he had dismissed them so lightly. Though Ning Changge's reputation was formidable, they were no ordinary individuals. To reach the land immortal realm required immense confidence. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to walk their paths to the end. While it was true that Ning Changge had slain 2 land immortals on Mount Zhongnan, no one knew the exact circumstances. The Dragon and Wood Island Masters exchanged a glance. The Dragon Island Master stepped forward and said, "If the little immortal wishes to see the martial art of the stone wall, then allow me to demonstrate." Ning Changge stood with his hands behind his back, his expression calm. "Both of you may attack together." His tone was serene, devoid of arrogance. He had no intention of underestimating them. He simply wanted to evaluate the Tai Chuan scripture and the paths of the 2 land immortals. Moreover, having just reached the foundation establishment stage, he was eager to test his newfound strength. "Very well," the Wood Island Master exclaimed, his eyes flashing with cold light. "Since the little immortal is so confident, we'll oblige." The atmosphere shifted dramatically. Moments ago, the Dragon and Wood Island Masters had been inviting Ning Changge to Xianxia Island. Now the 3 stood poised for battle. Huang Yaoshi and the others felt a surge of tension, followed by deep admiration. Ning Changge's calm confidence left them in awe. To challenge 2 land immortals at once with such composure, how many in the world could do the same? Huang Rong's gaze was fixed on Ning Changge, her admiration deepening. The closer she was to him, the more captivated she became. As the group retreated to a safe distance, they couldn't take their eyes off the scene. Such a battle was not to be missed. In the peach blossom forest, petals danced in the wind, swirling around the 3 figures. The beauty of the scene was tinged with the terrifying energy that filled the air. Ning Changge stood beneath the spirit peach tree, his hands behind his back. The Dragon and Wood Island Masters stood opposite him, one on each side, their expressions solemn. Their initial irritation had given way to caution. The youth before them was simply too unfathomable. Even as they released their auras, Ning Changge remained as still as a deep ocean, showing no sign of disturbance. Exchanging a glance, the Dragon and Wood Island Masters spoke in unison. "Little immortal, forgive us." They had no intention of holding back. If they were to demonstrate their strength, they would do so fully. The Dragon Island Master was the first to act. A terrifying sword intent erupted from him, sharp enough to tear through the void. The air seemed to fill with the stench of blood, as if a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood had materialized. Huang Yaoshi and the others turned pale. It was hard to imagine how someone who had spent decades in seclusion on an island could possess such a murderous sword intent. It was as if he had been a general guarding the border for years. Blood-red light radiated from the Dragon Island Master, and a massive crimson sword materialized at his side. His brow furrowed with a savage killing intent, and his true energy surged. The Wood Island Master was no less formidable. With his white beard and brows, he exuded an aura of unshakable calm. His presence was like a towering mountain, oppressive and immovable. Unlike the Dragon Island Master's violent sword intent, the Wood Island Master's aura was enigmatic and profound. It shifted between the weight of a mountain and the lightness of a feather, seamlessly transitioning between extremes. He extended his hand, and a green fist imprint materialized, radiating true energy. Though less visually striking than the Dragon Island Master's display, the Wood Island Master's technique carried a subtlety that suggested a higher level of mastery. Huang Yaoshi and Feng Heng exchanged a glance, their expressions grave. The Wood Island Master's fist technique was endlessly variable and utterly terrifying. Just watching it made them feel as though they might cough up blood. "It seems the world has underestimated these 2 island masters," Huang Yaoshi murmured. "They've kept a low profile on Xianxia Island, but it's clear that even among land immortals, they are not weak." In a sense, the 2 island masters were true seekers of the Tao. They cared little for fame, dedicating themselves to the study of the stone wall's martial art, content to live in seclusion for decades. Such determination was rare. A hint of respect flickered in Huang Yaoshi's eyes. "This is the sword Tao of slaughter, derived from the stone wall's martial art. This is the fist intent of weight, also derived from the stone wall's martial art." The 2 island masters spoke in turn, their voices filled with confidence. These were the fruits of their decades of study, and they intended to show Ning Changge the power of the stone wall's martial art, hoping to earn his respect. At this moment, they were using their full strength, short of a life-and-death struggle, to demonstrate their paths to Ning Changge. For the first time, Ning Changge's expression shifted. Watching the two display their paths, a spark of interest lit his eyes. His observation eyes activated without him realizing it. Mana flowed through him, enhancing the power of the observation eyes. He could now see the underlying connections between the seemingly disparate sword Tao of slaughter and the fist intent of weight. For the first time, he was genuinely intrigued. It seemed the Tai Chuan scripture was not as simple as he had thought. "Impressive," Ning Changge remarked, a hint of admiration in his voice. He understood the island master's intentions but didn't take offense. Whether or not he would go to Xia Qi Island depended solely on whether the Tai Chuan scripture piqued his interest. For now, however, he needed to assert his dominance. Standing beneath the swirling peach blossoms, Ning Changge looked like an immortal. With his left hand behind his back, he raised his right hand and pointed. A black flame appeared at his fingertip. A minor divine ability, the Samadhi True Fire. The moment the black flame appeared, the dragon and Wood Island masters felt a chill run down their spines. A sense of impending doom gripped them. Before they could react, Ning Changge's calm voice rang out. "This is my divine ability, the Samadhi True Fire. It burns essence, spirit, and energy." The two island masters were horrified as the black flame split into two and shot toward them, deceptively slow yet impossibly fast. An overwhelming sense of pressure enveloped them. They knew this was the divine ability Ning Changge had just comprehended, the one that had caused such a phenomenal disturbance. Earlier, only Huang Rong had witnessed Ning Changge's entire breakthrough process, including the transformation of the spirit peach tree. However, she didn't realize that these phenomena were a result of his ascension to the foundation establishment stage. She simply assumed that the black flame he had comprehended was the cause of the strange occurrences. Now, as Ning Changge unleashed the black flame, everyone's anticipation reached its peak. Their eyes widened instinctively, eager to see the power of a divine ability capable of causing such extraordinary phenomena. "Samadhi True Fire," the crowd murmured, the name alone exuding an aura of divine might. For the Dragon and Wood Island masters, who were directly facing the Samadhi True Fire, the pressure was overwhelming. Their pupils contracted sharply. The confidence they had felt moments ago vanished in an instant. Initially, they believed that together, they could at least hold their own against Ning Changge. But now, with the appearance of the Samadhi True Fire, all their confidence evaporated. Their true energy surged as they dared not hold back in the slightest. With a low shout, the Dragon Island master's blood-red greatsword, brimming with murderous intent, became even more dazzling. It radiated a crimson light that shot into the sky as the sword slashed toward the black flame. Meanwhile, the Wood Island master stomped forward, summoning a second green fist imprint with a wave of his hand. The two fist imprints, carrying an intricate interplay of weight and lightness, surged toward the black flame with unparalleled momentum. The clash of three peak-level experts created an oppressive atmosphere, even though they were deliberately restraining the aftermath of their attacks. Huang Yaoshi led the others in retreat after retreat, only then feeling some relief. All eyes were fixed on the peach blossom forest, unwilling to miss even the slightest detail. On the Dragon Island master's side, the blood-red greatsword, unmatched in its sharpness and murderous intent, was the first to collide with the Samadhi True Fire. Buzz! The greatsword erupted with a terrifying sword intent. The falling peach blossom petals seemed to transform into swords, dancing in the air as if paying homage to the King of Swords. The instant the sword intent exploded, everyone felt a chill run down their spines. Without a doubt, if Huang Yaoshi were caught in this sword intent, he would be reduced to dust in an instant. What shocked everyone even more was what happened when the blood-red greatsword struck the black flame. A bizarre scene unfolded. The greatsword appeared to be gnawed by some invisible force, a large, irregular chunk suddenly missing. "The Samadhi True Fire! It burned the sword intent," Huang Rong murmured, her eyes filled with awe. She had spent more time with Ning Changge over the past few days and knew a bit more about him. She had once curiously asked about the three true fires, and Ning Changge had explained them to her with a smile. Hearing Huang Rong's soft words, the others were equally stunned. A land immortal's sword intent, burned by a single flame, it was akin to having one's Tao path destroyed. The Dragon Island master's expression turned pale with shock. His complexion grew ashen as his true energy surged desperately to reinforce the greatsword. But before he could act, the black flame had already spread from the missing chunk to engulf the entire sword. In mere moments, the blood-red greatsword dissolved into nothingness before everyone's horrified eyes. This dissolution was terrifyingly thorough, leaving no trace behind. Only a faint blood-red glow escaped, which the Dragon Island Master quickly retrieved. The Dragon Island Master spat out a mouthful of blood, his face as pale as paper. When he looked at Ning Changge, his eyes involuntarily filled with fear. And when he glanced at the black flame, it was as if he were staring at a venomous snake or scorpion. In just a brief moment, his sword Dao's essence had been incinerated by the black flame. The faint blood-red glow was the essence of his sword Dao. Had the black flame consumed even that, the Dragon Island Master's sword Dao would have been utterly crippled. As it stood, he had suffered a minor injury, painful but not debilitating. The Dragon Island Master was filled with disbelief. If not for the fact that this was merely a sparring match and Ning Changge had held back, even the essence of his sword Dao would have been destroyed. If the little immortal wanted to kill me, it would be effortless. How can he be so strong? This question echoed not only in the Dragon Island Master's mind, but also in the hearts of Huang Yiashi and the others. They all stared wide-eyed, as if they had seen a ghost. They had expected a fierce battle, but the blood-red greatsword had lasted only moments against the Samadhi true fire. It was terrifying. Is the immortal Dao truly this fearsome? Huang Yiashi couldn't help but wonder in shock. He glanced at Ning Changge, whose gaze remained calm, as if everything had unfolded exactly as he had anticipated. The crowd then turned their attention to the Wood Island Master. Even the Dragon Island Master looked over. After all, this wasn't a life-and-death battle. Knowing he was outmatched, there was no need to stubbornly persist. He conceded and shifted his focus to the other fight. The Dragon Island Master's side had ended quickly. Meanwhile, the Wood Island Master's expression was unusually grim. The two fist imprints, one as heavy as a mountain and the other as light as a feather, floated on either side of him. Being more cautious by nature, he chose a defensive approach.